George is the only one who wasn't with me. So
George can't make it.
yeah, so it's really just, okay, so welcome everyone to the December 16th City of Boulder Planning Board meeting. This is the last meeting of the year. Thank you all for all the hard work in 2021. Looking forward to, well, we have a little bit of break after this. So, so this will be the last big effort. We have a quorum. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and hopefully Lupita will join before we start our public hearing. I want to, let's see, I have reminded you to put your planning board with your names. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Jean Gatza to give us the public participation at board meetings protocols. Jean?
Wonderful. Thank you, David. So as you know, let's see. I'm sure many of you have been joining us virtually over the past year and a half that we've been meeting virtually, but we still need to go over our rules. So our city has engaged with community members to co-create a vision for productive, meaningful, and inclusive civic conversations. This vision supports the physical and emotional safety for community members, staff, council, and board members, as well as democracy for people of all ages, identities, lived experiences, and political perspectives. You can find more about that process on the City Council's Participate in City Council Meetings page. The following are examples of rules of decorum found in our code and other guidelines that support this vision, and these will be upheld during this meeting. All remarks and testimony shall be limited to matters related to city business. No participant shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation against any person. Obscenity, dehumanizing language, racial epithets, and other speech and behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the ability to conduct this meeting are prohibited and will be enforced. And we ask that participants sign up using a full name or the name that they are commonly known by in their how their name displays. And if you don't know how to change that or can't change it, you can send that to me either in the Q&A or in the chat, and I'll be happy to change it for you. Currently, only audio testimony is permitted, and so participants during the open comment or the public hearing will not have the ability to turn your camera on. When we get to those opportunities for open comment, we'll use that raise hand function. You'll see if you hover at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see that. The chat is actually not disabled. It just goes to hosts and co-hosts. We need to use that only for meetings or messages related to trying to speak, wanting to speak, and not to, okay, that's not going to any content of the decision at hand. The chat, the Q&A are not part of the record. The board members should not be monitoring the chat or the Q&A because we can't have side conversations going on. It's not part of our rules that for decision making for these. So please understand and refrain from putting questions or comments in the chat that are really about the content of the decision. You can raise those and ask those questions to the board during the open comment. I think that's it. I will stop sharing and turn it back to you, David.
Thank you, Jean. We really appreciate you covering those protocols for us. Welcome, Lupita, yay. So now we've got everybody, we're expecting all 6 of us. So we can go forward with the content portion of the meeting. We don't have any minutes to review this week, so we'll go right to public participation. This is the section of our meeting where the public is welcome to talk to us about any subject other than a public hearing item. We have a public hearing for the 1820 15th Street Grace Commons Church site and use reviews. So please refrain from talking about that. There will be a slot in about 45 minutes to talk to that. So if you have anything else you'd like to talk to us about, please start raising your hands on the panel on the participants list, and I'll be looking for raised hands, and then Jean will unmute. We'll allow you to unmute. So do we have anyone who would like to address us on general topics? I see a hand. Lynn Siegel has raised her hand. Lynn, you should be able to unmute.
Gotcha, yeah. I had a bike crash just east on the creek trail of the farmer's market. And this was due to two guys with a dog that were clearly out of it, you know, on meth or what have you. And because I'm very cautious when I ride my bike, and I ride it all the time, and I go really fast, but whenever I'm near people, I really back off because I'm not vaccinated too. And I have my double mask on all the time, except when no one's on the path, etc. But these people couldn't control, and poor dog was scared of me, of course, because of the dog and the people lunged. And then the dog's attached to them. So to save the dog from being hurt, I flipped over on my bike. I'm 68 years old, slammed into the cement on my right arm. It still is really like there's things wrong in there, you know, like, and I didn't have use of my hand or my arm for 2 days. I can't use my derailleur on the right or my brake on the right on my bike. It really puts me at higher risk because I use my bike for all transportation. I don't want to use my car. So this is very debilitating for me. It puts my life at risk. And when this is my form of exercise also. So we need less meth people on the path. And the way we do this is to increase affordable housing, and not by on Pearl and Folsom increasing the number and making Ollie, is that his name, have to go back and redesign the thing for higher density apartments because people are opposed to $2.4 million condos. Because I don't want to understand this. I don't want the condos. I don't want any of that crap there. I want Hoshi Motors. I want my thrift store. I want the services that I use. I already have to drive out for my physical therapy on my bike out to Foothills, because my insurance doesn't cover really locally right down at 933 Alpine. That's higher risk for me to drive my bike now because of hitting this meth person. And the meth person is there because the more you add more people to this community, the more it drives up the cost of housing, the more you can never catch up. As John heard at East Boulder working group today, you can never catch up. You're chasing your tail. You're the guinea pig in the wheel running around. You're never going to catch up. What you need is an integrated process, a per capita impact cost of each human before you accept any developments. You need to control the situation from the fundamental, the core values, that's the bottom line.
Thank you, Lynn. And gosh, I really hope that you recover from that accident. I can relate. I had a bike accident myself this year. So my thoughts go out to you as you recover. All right, that was one hand that I saw for the general public comment. Do we have any more people? This is the last call for hand raising. And if not, we'll move on to our next agenda item. All right, so with that, we'll move on to our first public hearing, or only public hearing for tonight. Or I'm sorry, no, first we have a call-up item. Getting ahead of myself. Number 3 on the agenda is a call-up item, use review for expansion of fire station number 7 with the addition of 361 square foot storage room for firefighter equipment by enclosing a portion of an existing carport at 1380 55th Street. A proposal also includes a 12.5% parking reduction. Decision can be called up before the 23rd of December. Is there any discussion? Elaine is knowledgeable about this item. If anyone has any questions or if anyone is interested in calling it up. Don't see anything. All right, well, great job on that item, Elaine, thank you. All right, so with that, let's go on to the public hearing item. This is a public hearing in consideration of 3 items related to the redevelopment of a portion of the property located at 1820 15th Street. for the main church campus at Grace Commons Church, formerly known as First Presbyterian Church, along with the redevelopment of property located at 1603 Walnut Street, which is referred to in the packet as the church annex. The three items are a site review, and I'm not going to read all the text. A site review that is LUR 2020-00064, use review for the fourth story in event space, which is LUR 2021-00001, and a use review for the exception to the code for a higher percentage of efficiency living unit apartments above 40%, and that is LUR 2021-00015. This is a quasi-judicial item. I'd like to ask the board if there are any ex parte communications or potential conflicts of interest that anybody would like to disclose. All right, I'll just disclose that I have had a couple of conversations in the last week, just because I'm the liaison to Design Advisory Board. So we did discuss this in a public meeting. As a result, I want to welcome Roy Bilosikovic, who's here to just give us a little quick snapshot of what of the DAB review earlier this year. Thank you for joining us, and that will come after the applicant presentation. So we discussed that, and that we didn't discuss any content or anything relevant to the decisions we'll be making. I also ran across Derinda Academy, who is, I think, going to be speaking to us tonight at the Central Park event on Tuesday, and we just discussed the fact that there would be a public hearing, but we didn't discuss anything relevant to the decision making. But I did have those two conversations. So great. All right, with that then I'll turn it over to Charles. Would you like to introduce this, and Elaine?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So as the board probably remembers, this last appeared before the planning board back in October 2020. So staff has been iterating on this with the applicant for quite some time, and I'm pleased to pass it over to Elaine McLaughlin, our senior planner. She's going to present staff's analysis tonight.
Great, thanks, Charles, and good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen, and so I'm going to stop my video because I've noticed it often will impede the presentation. So bear with me while I boot this up, and let me know if everybody can see this then. And so for starters, a brief overview of staff's presentation. We'll look at the process to date along with the existing built context and the planning context. We'll do a brief summary of the proposed project, and then we'll present 4 key issues that are followed by staff's recommendation. And as Charles described, last time planning board saw this was in October last year, and most of you were present for the concept plan. It's been through a bit of process. City Council considered calling it up on November 10th last year, but voted not to. And that was followed by the applications that were filed in January and February. Landmarks Board did approve a demolition of the 1950s addition on the main campus. We'll talk a bit about that. DAB then reviewed the plans later in that month, and that was followed by a good neighbor meeting in March. The applicant also went to Landmarks DRC several times to review the interface of that new addition of the main campus to the historic chapel, and an LAC was issued in September, and that brings us to where we are today. And then council will consider a call up on January 4th. And it always helps to take a look at the context in terms of what's been there before. And so in terms of the site's history, the church has occupied the main campus for about 150 years, when in 1872, the First Presbyterian Church established small church on the site. And then in 1895, they constructed that iconic chapel building that sits at the corner of 16th and Walnut. And then in the lower left, you see a 1950s addition that was a new wing with a courtyard. And then a couple other additions in the 70s. There was a larger sanctuary built next to the historic chapel. And then in the 90s, the children's wing was built next to Canyon. And so in terms of additional context, across the street, you'll see in the upper right, 1603 Walnut. In 1986, the church purchased that as an annex. It had previously been a tire shop, and the annex served as youth and college ministries program for the past 35 years, as well as the deacon's closet that provides clothing and necessities for homeless persons. And then the annex also hosts Thanksgiving meals annually to well over 300 members of the homeless community. So with much of downtown Boulder, the site surroundings here are varied, and it's owing to the decades in which redevelopment has occurred. And it mostly includes large commercial buildings in the context to the north and west, and residential buildings to the south and east, which also includes newer buildings like the 1655 and 1707 Walnut buildings, as well as those that are under construction, like the mixed-use building at the former Liquor Mart site. And then there's historic homes across Walnut and 16th in the Chamberlain Historic District. And it's always helpful, of course, to take a look at the context. And of course, being in the downtown, the sites are within one of 3 regional centers identified in the comp plan for decades as generally places with potential for infill and redevelopment and are higher intensity. And then the BVCP, in this case, further identifies the importance of the central area core, which the site is a part of, you'll see there, noting it will continue as a regional service center of the Boulder Valley for office, retail, financial, governmental, civic, cultural, and university activities. The Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan designates the land use of the sites as regional business, defined as areas that will remain the dominant focus for regional business activity, where street activation and a mix of uses is encouraged as the areas are refurbished. And the expectation is that it includes a wide range of uses, including cultural facilities and housing, as is planned here. And then consistent with the land use, the sites are both zoned DT5, and that's defined in the land use code as business areas within the downtown core that are in the process of changing to a higher intensity use, where a wide range of uses are permitted, and that this area has the greatest potential for development and redevelopment within the downtown core. So that sort of gets reiterated between the comp plan and the zoning. Then under the downtown urban design guidelines, the sites are within the non-historic area of the downtown that's shown in orange, where the objectives are to reinforce the downtown pedestrian character and encourage sensitive design abutting neighborhoods. As also shown, a portion of the historic church and later additions are within the Chamberlain Historic District that was locally designated in the 1990s. And that extends east of the site, as you can see in the map on the right. It illustrates an area in crosshatch that was approved for demolition by the Landmarks Board. That's that 1950s edition. And there's a small area planned for reconstruction that'll remain within the Chamberlain Historic District that the applicant received an LAC for. So the proposed project's twofold. On the main church campus there, the existing 1950s addition and courtyard are proposed to be replaced with approximately 44,000 square feet in a 3-story addition. And then on the annex site, up to the upper right, a new 4-story mixed-use building is planned to replace the existing annex building. And so when we break that down a little bit, on the main campus, the total build out of the floor area equates to about 1.16 FAR. The additions planned with 2 and 3 stories with a maximum height of 48 feet that steps down from the corner to the east. And the uses planned include a ground floor corner basketball court that's also slightly below grade, along with a large gathering space in the middle there. There's meeting and classroom spaces on the 2nd story, and the campus ministry offices are on the 3rd story with an outdoor deck. For the annex site, the building's planned with about a 2.24 FAR in 4 stories. It has a peak height of 53 feet, and the planned uses on the site include the basement area that will continue as the deacon's office, or closet rather, 1st floor with dining space for continued meal service for the homeless, and a separate corner cafe. The 2nd and 3rd stories have 15 dwelling units, each with 9 efficiency living units and 6 one-bedroom units on each floor. All of them planned as permanently affordable. And then the roof is planned as a leasable event space with an outdoor deck. For key issue 1, consistency with the site review criteria, we'll highlight a few of them. There's many criteria that are in the memo, and if there's any questions with other criteria, I'm happy to answer afterwards. So with regard to the criteria that asks if the project's consistent with the BVCP land use and policies, the plans fit under that broad regional business land use and where a mix of uses with street activation is encouraged, as we noted, and housing is also encouraged. And similarly, there's a number of BVCP policies that the plans address, from jobs housing balance and affordable housing policies to those related to the role of the central area and the mix of uses that also foster socioeconomic diversity with the permanently affordable housing that's proposed. The review criteria related to open space is addressed with the 2 sites providing open space that serves the anticipated residents, occupants, tenants, and visitors of the sites, including that each residential unit at the annex has an individual balcony. And there's also shared space on the roof that's also got an event space on the roof for the planned event space. And the main campus is planned with a large courtyard space and a deck. And these all provide both sun and shade, private and gathering space that's consistent with the criteria. The building design criteria is met, as the height, mass, scale, orientation, and configuration are all compatible with the surrounding context for both sites, whereas we looked at earlier, there's predominantly taller structures within the DT5 zoning to the north, west, and east. And it's also something we'll talk a little bit about with regard to key issue 4 and the design guidelines. And then consistent with the review criteria for permanence in building materials, the primary finished materials are red brick on both buildings, along with a narrow gray brick accent and accents of metal panel and all wood, all elegant and durable materials. Then there's 3 relevant criteria for the planned parking reduction at the annex building. And this reduction is for 19 spaces where 30 units are planned, and there's a standard of 1 space per dwelling unit, and that equates to a 36% parking reduction. So with regard to criteria A and B and the adequate accommodation of parking for both occupants and visitors, staff notes that the public rights of way have about 118 on-street parking spaces between Canyon and Pearl from 15th to 17th, and that includes 25 that are directly adjacent to the annex building on 16th and Walnut. And then for visitors, because the site's within KJID, the Central Area General Improvement District, there's 5 parking structures and 7 surface lots within a quarter to a half mile of the site that have about 2,500 parking spaces total. And that includes the one that's close by across the street, actually 15th and Pearl, and then the one at 14th and Walnut. So for the nature of occupancy of the residential criterion E, because of the very defined numbers of units and bedrooms designed into the building, the nature of occupancy is not expected to change. And further, important to note, there's a robust TDM that you can see on the right that includes provision of 50 long-term secure bike parking spaces and 24 short-term spaces. And it's also important to note that the downtown ranks as an area with very high walkability, as noted in the Transportation Master Plan's network, or rather neighborhood access tool. And there's also bus, bike, and car share facilities within a quarter to half mile of the site. So it's very alternative mode rich for the residents and visitors. So for key issue 2, staff finds the proposed event center use is consistent with the use review criteria. First, in terms of consistency with the zoning, as we noted, where DT5 is considered the highest intensity downtown zoning district and with a wide range of uses expected. In terms of a rationale, the use is considered a transition between the higher intensity downtown and Pearl Street and the activity that's there in the lower intensity uses a little bit to the east and south. And in terms of compatibility, the applicant prepared a detailed management plan to control the operating characteristics of the space. And as you can see there, it includes hours of operation, a maximum number of guests, limits on inside and outside amplification, and provision of on-site events manager for all events. The plan also indicates the building will be designed by an acoustic engineer, and therefore staff finds that the event space will be reasonably compatible with and have minimal negative impact on the use of nearby properties. For key issue 3, the provision of greater than 40% efficiency living units, which are defined as a dwelling unit that contains a bathroom and kitchen, does not exceed a maximum floor area of 475 square feet. Staff notes that an increased percentage in the number of ELUs within the building in turn increases the overall number of residential units. And that fosters several key policies related to provision of permanently affordable residential in the city, consistent with this policy. And then for key issue 4, we'll present and highlight a few of the key guidelines. For the non-historic area, it recommends the applicant consider incorporating traditional facade elements in new and contemporary ways. And staff finds that the proposed buildings achieve this, as you can see, with full dimension brick, vertically proportioned upper story windows, ground floor display windows with bulkheads and pilasters that are all in keeping with the historic building bay patterns. And really the elements are intended in the non-historic area to augment the pedestrian orientation of the buildings. Guidelines also suggest to consider similar height, mass, and scale to buildings in the area, noting that perceived heights are just as important. And in the context of the Annex building, there's 3, 4, and 5-story buildings on 3 sides, along with the 2 to 2.5 story residences across Walnut. The project plans included sections that illustrate how the building is set back along Walnut, so that most of the building is 2 stories along the street with the 3rd and 4th stories set back. And then you'll note that there's a taller 3rd story on the corner, which is also consistent with the guidelines. For the main campus, given that the addition is planned where there are 3 and 4-story buildings, the applicant has punctuated the corner with a taller element and then steps the building down along Walnut Street, also consistent with this guideline. And then guideline C suggests to maintain human rather than monumental scale by avoiding large featureless facade surfaces. And so to divide the face into familiar intervals, you'll note that the traditional elements in the building do help to break down the building into these familiar intervals. And then similarly, the Annex building utilizes ground floor transparency and upper story patterning of windows, balcony openings to ensure a human scale, and one that is contemporary yet appropriate to the downtown context. So with that, staff recommends planning board approve the site and use review applications and has provided motion language in the memo. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thanks so much, Elaine. Yeah, let's go ahead and we'll turn off sharing. Thank you. And we'll just go ahead and turn it over to the board now and go ahead and raise your hand or signal if you have a question. Sarah, let's start with you.
So this is the first time we've had first of all, Elaine, thank you very much. This is the first time that I can recall that we've had a proposal for permanently affordable housing where it isn't entirely clear who the management of the permanently affordable housing is. Either it's been Boulder Housing Partners or it's been Andy Allison or Habitat for Humanity. And this, unless I missed it when I was reading the packet, I did not have any clarity on that part of this proposal. Do you have any insight into that?
Yes, yeah. Catherine with Element Properties is here this evening as part of the applicant team, and she can address any questions you have about that.
Okay, then I will wait till she can do that. But is it unusual from a staff perspective, since that's the thing you can answer, is it unusual for this kind of permanently affordable housing to be proposed without an existing permanently affordable housing partner?
Well, I believe that's what Element Properties does, and Catherine again can highlight that for us in their presentation.
Okay.
Great, thank you, Sarah. We'll hear that then with the applicant presentation. Are there any other questions in the city? John.
Yeah, thank you. I was interested in two things. One is the request for a diminished setback on the top floor as compared to is standard in this area, if I understand correctly. And the other is how the issues associated with potential interference or disturbance with the neighboring apartment on the southeast corner of the top floor is dealt with.
Well, I can pull up an image. Bear with me here and I'll get to the right slide. But so the applicant is requesting less than a 15-foot setback for that second story up to a third story. And some of that is due to just the ability to put a certain number of residential units in there. And so the applicant can address some of that in their presentation. And then in terms of the setback, in terms of, could you just clarify what you meant about your question with the corner?
Well, in the public comments, there have been several remarks made about potential noise and interference with the neighbors on based on what's happening on the top floor with a special section assigned to the tenants of the building. And I understand there's been some attempt to respond to that, but it's not clear to me what the proposal is to deal with.
Understood. And thanks for bringing that up. Originally, there was an outdoor deck planned in this location for the residents to share. And after concerns were brought up by neighbors, that space was moved over to the other side of the elevator and stair core. And so it's actually moved over, as is the rest of the deck. It's essentially blocked by the building, the plans for the building. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. That's very clear. Thanks.
Great, thank you, John. Any other questions for Elaine? Okay, well, thanks so much. I guess then we'll move on to the applicant presentation. This would, I have Dean Hofelek from Coburn. Are you going to be kicking us off, or is somebody else going to start us off?
Mr. Chairman, this is Doug Smith, and I'm going to kick us off for the applicant, if that's all right.
That's great, Doug. And we have you down for 15 minutes. Do you think that's a good amount of time for your presentation?
We'll endeavor to get as close as we can.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Okay. Good evening, Planning Board. My name's Doug Smith. I'm a covenant partner at Grace Commons Church, where I serve as the leader of the Boulder Vision Project. This project was begun almost a decade ago when First Presbyterian Church sought clear title to its property.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'm having, could you allow Dean Hoflick to share his screen so I can share our presentation?
Dean,
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Hold on just a second. All right, go ahead and try now.
I see it coming up. Good.
Got it now. There you go. There's that historic chapel that Elaine spoke of earlier, 1895 edition. So this project was begun kind of a decade ago when First Presbyterian Church sought clear title to its property in downtown Boulder, and it's property that the church has occupied for 150 years, November of 2022. The plan to summarize in our application before you was adopted by our congregational leadership in 2019 and reaffirmed this past fall. We believe our downtown location is a gift from God, and we want to make it a gift to our city. We see countless opportunities to make our space community space for community benefit, but we face a challenge. Our facilities have become outdated and confusing to navigate. Our main campus buildings are a barrier to our vision, and the annex is an opportunity unrealized. Our vision is to radically transform our buildings and their footprint for community benefit. We have designed our buildings to welcome our community into our main campus and to fit into the downtown design context. We've created welcoming entrances and indoor-outdoor meeting areas that are open to our community. We've renovated our children's wing to become a preschool that is open to all in Boulder with preschool children. At the heart of this vision is our declaration that we are for the city of Boulder, not only through our updates to the buildings, but through our lives being open and willing to serve our community's needs. The annex represents our vision to meet some of the most pressing needs of our city. 30 units of affordable housing to all that qualify. Mercy ministries that include clothing exchange, personal hygiene, legal advice, and regular meals for the unhoused. Workforce training for those entering adulthood, and an indoor-outdoor event space that is sorely needed in downtown Boulder. The revenue from the event space provides essential funding for the Mercy Ministries portion of the project. We are grateful for the time and effort expended by city staff in reviewing our plans and for their insightful comments. We hope to provide greater clarity for our plan through tonight's presentation. And to that end, I will hand the presentation over to Josh Felix of BGW Architects, who are our design partners for the main campus. Josh will be followed by Pete Weber from Coburn Architects, who are leading the entitlement process and the annex design. Also with us tonight, as been mentioned, is Catherine Bean from Element Properties, who are our development partner on the affordable housing. I'll hand this over to Josh.
Thanks, Doug. Good evening. My name is Josh Felix. The Grace Commons Church project provides much needed building space for a thriving church, which seeks to better serve its community through its facilities. Through selective demolition, remodel, and the construction of a new building, the proposed development will provide clear, inviting, and spacious access points for pedestrian and vehicular flow, enhanced open space, community-oriented facilities, and an enhanced street-side presence. Next slide. The existing campus, which totals roughly 88,000 square feet of building area, was built in several phases over the years and is anchored by the historic chapel, which sits on the corner of 16th and Walnut. Next slide, please. The historic chapel is completely within the limits of the Chamberlain Historic District and outside the scope of our proposed project. The design team, city staff, and the Landmarks Board have worked diligently to ensure that the connection between the historic and proposed provides a well-proportioned, transparent transition. Next slide. Our proposed development pulls back some of the incremental development to the west of the historic chapel to provide access, street frontage with relocated parking, and much needed community gathering space, which are not attainable in the current campus configuration. Next slide. The existing paved parking and 2 vehicular site entrance points along Walnut will be removed with new on-site parking and a utility pedestrian entrance proposed midway along 15th Street, creating a natural setback from the street, shielded by buildings on 3 sides. The placement of the new building provides a natural gathering space and encourages pedestrian circulation to the main entrance through a large landscaped open space. Next slide. The project will provide 17,000 square feet of new building area over 3 floors with an additional 5,600 square feet of occupied roof area. The 3-story building will occupy the northwest corner of the site, anchoring the downtown intersection with a missing 4th quadrant building mass. Next slide. This corner portion of development will replace an existing at-grade parking lot. The building will be set back off curb lines to maintain site triangle requirements and provide widened city sidewalks. Next slide, please. The programming of the new building will provide a large pre-assembly gathering space and lobby. The entrances to the new building will be developed as an extension of the open space courtyard to the north and the parking courtyard to the west. The interior gathering space and lobby will function as the internal campus hub. Moving northwest, the building form and programming is geared around a multifunction gymnasium, which extends to a level below grade, and youth assembly rooms, which open up to the entrance courtyard. Next slide. The second floor consists of multifunction religious classrooms and administrative office areas. Next slide, please. The third floor houses collegiate ministry space and flexible administrative space that opens onto an occupied roof deck. Next slide. The layout of the buildings has provided a natural vehicular parking and pedestrian access courtyard off of 15th Street. This paved courtyard will provide 8 parking stalls on site. This courtyard provides a delivery and service entrance point. Based on thoughtful feedback from DAB, the design team focused on shielding the trash enclosure and blending its cladding to be an extension of the building. Next slide. The exterior elevations have been completely revised since concept review. DAB review and comment provided the outline of design revision, which included a higher emphasis on traditional brick masonry, massing the building with more of an emphasis on ground floor elements, providing floor-to-floor massing consistent with design guidelines, and simplifying the overall facade elements. Next slide. The design team then worked with city staff over multiple iterations to define the current design, which leverages more traditional brick masonry, exposed steel trim, and a reduced refined window pattern tying all the upper floors together. The exterior materials on the project have been consolidated to modular brick, accent gray brick, Ipe wood rain screen, storefront glazing, and exposed metal. The buildings proposed in this overall project, due to proximity, use, and exposure, have been designed to complement each other. To explain the Annex building programming and design, I'm handing the presentation over to Pete Weber of Coburn Architecture.
Thanks, Josh. I want to talk about the Annex portion of the building. I'm Pete Weber, one of the principals at Coburn Architecture. And I want to start with this slide. I think it does a really nice job of showing how our proposed building fits into the context of this downtown location. Go ahead. And as a reminder, this is what we're proposing to replace, which is the existing Annex building. Next. I'm going to kind of walk us through the program of the building, starting in the basement on the left. The basement will house 2 primary functions. The Deacon's Closet is the component that provides clothing to the unhoused. And then the residential storage portion on the south, which provides additional storage for the residential units above, along with some short-term bike parking. The main floor houses the Mercy Ministries. That is really centered around a kitchen, which is in the middle there on the 16th Street side. That kitchen will serve 2 functions. It will serve the Mercy Ministry Lamb's Lunch function, which will happen in the space to the north, and then a cafe, which is open to the public, that is south facing on Walnut Street. The other 2 components of this are the entries to the building and the parking, residential parking at the rear of the building, accessed off the alley. And you can see the 2 separate lobbies here as well. Next. The upper 2, second and third level of the building are 15 units each of affordable housing for a total of 30 units. Those units are comprised of some efficiency units that Elaine mentioned, 1-bedrooms and studio units. And I want to point out a couple things as we go through our presentation, changes that we've made along the way to take into account comments we've heard from you all, as well as DAB and our neighbors. One of the things is we've stepped back the 3rd floor so that the provides that relief at the 3rd floor level. We've talked a lot with our immediate neighbor to the east on the 3rd floor, who has raised a number of concerns about particularly privacy and view. So that deck on the 3rd floor in the southeast corner is stepped back further. And we've added some additional screening elements and buffering elements, which I'll get into a little later. Next. And then I want to talk about the 4th floor. The 4th floor houses the event space. And again, as Doug mentioned, that event space is sort of the economic engine, which helps the Mercy Ministries down on the ground level. I think Elaine mentioned through John's question how we've relocated the residential amenity deck from the eastern side of the stair to the western side That reduced our event deck a little bit, but it does allow the building to provide the buffer from that amenity deck to our neighbors to the east. And in fact, the whole building really does that. The whole thing was designed so that the building itself provides the biggest buffer from any sound that might be produced as part of an event, our neighbors to the east. One last thing I want to point out before I get into sound is the open to below there on the eastern side of the building. That provides a light well down through the center of our building. And it also provides some relief to a deck that's on the 4th level of our neighboring building. And I want to talk about sound. This has come up. I'm sure you've heard from our neighbors, and you're probably going to hear from them again here in a minute about concerns about sound. We did some sound testing to try to find out just what is the baseline in this particular location. Placed a microphone on the roof of the existing annex building. These tests were taken November 12th. We made certain that it was not an unusually windy day. And I want you to take a particular look at the blue line here. That is sort of the average ambient sound that was measured on that day. You can see it starts out fairly low in the morning, the early morning hours, starts to kick up right around 8 a.m. It stays relatively level over the course of the day. The important thing to note here is the decibel level that was recorded is, in that range of 57, 58, up to 60 decibels. And that is the cars passing by, just the ambient noise, the rooftop units and so on that are in the neighborhood. That spike you see on the far right was a siren late at night. What we're being asked to be held to from a noise and sound standpoint is a 65 decibel limit that is recognized by the code in mixed use district as a limit. That's the limit that we're asking to be held to. It is the same limitation that our neighbors have, that the restaurant across the alley has, that our neighbors across the street and next door. We're asking to be held only to that same standard and not above it. Important to note that that's a 65 decibel limit. And you can see the yellow line here, the upper end level of the ambient sound over the course of the day starts to approach that same 65 decibel limit. Okay, let's keep going. A little bit about the exterior of the building. Again, I'm going to kind of point out some of the changes that we've made along the way. The upper elevation is the west elevation, which is 16th Street. And we have modified the openings. We originally had some more horizontally oriented openings, you may recall from concept plan. We've changed those, so now they're all vertically oriented, more in keeping with the tradition downtown. We've added some detailing, lintels and sills, that again is more in keeping with what is traditionally seen. And we've maximized the transparency at the lower level. That fits in really well with the church's desires to be more open to the community. On the 3rd floor, you can see how we've stepped back and changed materials at that 3rd floor level. And then the stairs also step back on both the west and south elevation. Next. The north elevation faces the alley, similar massing. We've taken the brick kind of around the corner there. You can see how the parking is accessed in the center of the gray portion. And then the east elevation is one that's really, you can't see truly, but this does illustrate how that light well runs down through the middle of the building. Next. We put this image in to show how the building relates to the building next door, and in particular, directly to our neighbors. You can also see how the 3rd floor is stepped back here, as well as the 4th floor. You see the amenity deck with the planters along the edge. The deck that I mentioned when we were looking at the plans on the far east, southeast corner, we made a number of changes at the request of our neighbor there. We placed a privacy screen, 6-foot tall privacy screen with a planter behind it, a fairly deep planter to keep folks further from that edge. And we've thickened the wall there that runs parallel to Walnut as well, to keep those residents kind of away from that edge, and again, increase the buffer from our neighbor. Next. This image looks at the amenity space as if you were on the tower. This is the steeple of the church catty corner. And you can see how the building itself is really forming that buffer to sound from our deck to the neighbors. Next. This is sort of the same vantage point, but taken around onto to 16th Street. The planters there you can see are the boundaries of that amenity deck. This slide also does a nice job of showing how the lobby space is differentiated from the rest of the building, and signifying that as a sort of separate element. Next.
Peter, are you getting close to the end? Because we did get to the 15
Sam,
minutes.
I'll be quick. This just
Great.
shows that transparency at the lower level. This is street view. One more. This is along Walnut Street, showing how the transparency of that stair. Next. And then this is kind of the walker's view along Walnut. We've paid a lot of attention to the articulation, the awnings, the outdoor room we're trying to create for the cafe, the kick plate, a little more detail at that lower level as you engage the pedestrian. Next. And then this kind of contextual side showing how the building fits into its context. And lastly, I just want to reiterate a few of the things that Doug said. The reason that we're here is really all about community benefit. I know there's been a lot of, you all probably done a lot of work on community benefit, and we really see this entire project as a benefit to the community, not just pieces and parts of it, but the whole thing in its entirety. And really, we're excited to be involved with this and try to help create something that really is a gift to the community, and we hope you can accept it. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much for that presentation. Very useful. So with that, we'll go ahead and open it up then to board questions. And maybe we can pull that share down for the time being. And if we need to share something during questions, we can pull things back up again. But it's always nice to see people's faces. So who would like to kick us off with questions for the applicant? Sarah and then John.
The same question I had to the staff, which is if someone could give us some insight into the management of the permanently affordable housing units.
I think we'll let Catherine handle that one.
Thanks, Pete. Sarah, it's nice to see you. My name's Catherine Bean. I'm a principal with Element Properties. We're a Boulder-based developer, and we do a lot of different types of projects around town. We do for sale townhomes, we do office buildings, and we also have a really large affordable housing practice. So we've delivered about 400 units of affordable housing in the city of Boulder in the last 5-6 years. We also have another 150 in our pipeline that we're working on, including Grace Commons, which we're really excited about, as well as a project that just received competitive tax credits from CHAFA. So we're excited to partner with Grace Commons. We worked with Trinity Lutheran on their Trinity Commons project. So we have worked with other churches in Boulder, developing affordable housing and being their partner. So that's on the front end of the development side. And then once we get to completion and we get to management and leasing up, we'll work with the church to find the right fit for a property manager. Somebody who has tax credit experience, somebody who has experience in Boulder. And we've got a few different ones that we work with. And so we'll set that up as the time gets closer. Does that help?
So you all don't know who the property manager will be. You also don't know what the tenants, and you don't know who the tenants will be. I know with Boulder Housing Partners, with someone like Andy Allison, he tries to focus on folks at the top end of the affordable housing scale, and Boulder Housing Partners focuses on folks at the lower end and up to the top end. But so you all don't know who your tenants, that's not the way I want to put it. Do you have a sense of, is this going to be like senior housing? What is the expectation?
Yeah, it's a great question. We've been thinking about workforce housing here. So in a lot of ways,
I'm going to stop you right there. We have no definition for workforce housing in our land use code. So please be specific what you mean by that.
Absolutely. So when Grace Commons was thinking about this, they thought about the other churches in the downtown area who have targeted different populations. The senior population at Trinity, the younger population with the Attention Homes Project. And so Grace Commons, and maybe Doug wants to speak to this too, really wants to target groups who are around 60% AMI. We're still having conversations with the housing division, and it'll be conversations with CHAFA that may reduce some of those a bit. But when we say workforce, it's in that kind of 50 to 60% AMI. Does that answer your question?
That's very helpful because it will determine, it'll play a role in you guys figuring out who the right property manager is. So,
Absolutely, we agree.
all right, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. John. Oh,
Yeah, thank you also for this being. Is there any preference given to members of the congregation of Grace Commons, or is this intended to be administered separately completely from the congregation there?
It'll be administered separately. So there's two things about that. One is Grace Commons fully believes in and endorse both fair housing rules as well as the City of Boulder rules surrounding affordable housing. So there'll be no preferential treatment for members of the community or any other specific group. It's just saying, if you meet the income qualifications, you're welcome to apply, and we'd love to have you as a resident. I think that's a really important piece as well to the church's commitment to this entire project being for the community, to be for Boulder with love, which is just a tagline that really resonates with me. That it's saying it's not about us being insular, it's about us opening our arms to the entire community.
Thank you.
Lisa.
Thank you so much for bringing that up, Catherine. So that was just another question. We were talking about fair housing and kind of the vision for how this housing would be administered. I just wanted to clarify, and perhaps it's already adequately covered under fair housing laws, but is the intention that this would be open to anybody, regardless of their religion, regardless of their sexual orientation? Is this intended to be fully open? Or would there be any restrictions on the kinds of folks who might be able to, get housing within this development?
No, absolutely no restrictions like that. That's covered by both fair housing, and for reference, I spent time working at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development in Washington, D.C. And so I'm extremely familiar with fair housing rules, but also with the agreements that we set up with the Division of Housing, which in a lot of ways mean more. They're kind of even more pointed in saying anyone is welcome to be here, and Grace Commons is excited to embrace that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Lupita?
Yes, my question goes along those lines, but more in regards to the choice of, 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, which we have had, that it addresses different demographics, families versus couples or single people. Did you have some special formula that you utilized to break that down, or how you're thinking about it along those lines?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And of course, Doug and Pete and the rest of our team can jump in too, but I'll give you my kind of immediate reaction. This whole project works as one, right? So we have that Mercy Ministry space on the first floor with the homeless services. It's so important to our community. And then we have 2 floors of affordable housing. And then we have the event space. And that event space is the financial engine that's going to bring the income in to allow the church to build that first floor. So without the income from that 4th floor, the first floor wouldn't be a possibility. So then we have those 2 floors in the middle left for affordable housing. Affordable housing being a goal of the church, a way to serve this city. And when we think about a tax credit project, all of the tax credit investors we work with say you need to have at least 30 units in order for this to be worth our time, in order for this to be a viable tax credit project. And so that really forced us, based on the FAR that we had available, into these smaller units. And so from a financial perspective, for the whole thing to work, we needed 30 units in those 2 stories, as well as the space on the 4th floor to help finance the first floor.
And I'll just add that, one of the things that we think that makes this work is our downtown location. Relatively small units, as you point out, but we're immediately adjacent to the most amenity-rich part of our city. And so while your unit may not be very large, the world outside is huge. So we also point out a couple of other things. We do have that additional storage space in the basement and some additional bike storage as well. Everybody has their own private deck as well as a shared deck up on the 4th floor.
Thank you. Are there other questions from board members before we loop back who haven't asked yet? I'll call on you, Sarah. I'm going to call on myself to kind of leverage on what Lupita was just talking about. Mercy Ministries and Deacon's Closet are really important to the fabric of the support that we give in Boulder to the homeless. We've been really struggling from overflow facilities shutting down, and I just wondered if number one, is the capacity going to go up with the new floor space in the new building? And number two, have you thought about kind of how to keep providing services during the time when the construction will be happening, and to see if there can be some uninterrupted? I see Doug is kind of reacting to that. So yeah, thank you.
That's such a great question, David. My team's asking the same thing. Doug, what are we going to do when you tear all this down? So we're working with other ministries and churches in the area to try to see how we can move some of these services over to them during the construction period, which we expect to be about 12 to 15 months in duration. We do have more room though, between the basement that Pete talked about, where we have the clothing exchange and storage, we have restrooms, showers, and personal hygiene areas. And then on the ground floor, the Mercy Ministries, that includes the Lamb's Lunch and breakfast, well, that will then be turned over to being used for client advising, for legal advice, and personal hygiene, those kind of things that can go on there. So that we can flip that floor, that makes it much more usable than we have today.
Okay, good to hear. Thank you. Sarah, we'll go back to you then.
Sorry about that. You'd think by now we'd all know exactly where the unmute button was. So I did want to, there were two issues, this is for the applicants. There were two issues that were brought up in the letters that we received during this round. One of which does have to do with timing and sound, and one that has to do with something as simple as snow removal from the alley. And I'd like to hear both some feedback from the applicant as to what their openness is to maybe some specific time, not more specific, but slightly different timeframes on the startup of events in the morning and ending in the evening. And also, since we know that, since it seems that the city will not actually remove snow from the alley, what is going to be the church's solution to that problem?
Right, Sarah, if I could approach those. First on the hours, we've been very specific in our operation plan, management plan. We expect that in order for us to start an event at 8:30 or 9 in the morning, we'll need to have caterers and set up people into the space by 7 a.m. We think that'd be the same thing you'd find at any hotel or any other kind of event space downtown. So in the management plan, it has a 7 o'clock start for getting ready, and 8:30 is the limit on starting an event. 8:30 or 9, I'm indifferent to that, but I think that kind of startup time is needed to get ready for an event if you have actually guests coming in the door and speakers beginning at 8:30 or 9. I think we've cut off at 9 in the evening on those, and then allow for time to clean up and put those things away in the evening. And I think we cut off at 11 o'clock on the weekends. So we thought those were reasonable. Again, the idea of the pre-function time to get ready, the actual function starting at 8:30 or 9 in the morning. As to snow removal, we found that to be quite an interesting thing. Of course, we've been on this site for 40 years. Nobody's removed the snow in the alley for us before, and we have always seemed to be able to remove it or take care of it ourselves. In this case, it's not going to change. The city doesn't remove snow in the alleys. And so we expect we'll remove, if there's a problem for us, we're going to take care of it. We don't intend to remove all the snow in the alleyway for everyone. And we don't expect the city to as well. So we're going to take care of our problem if we have one.
Okay. And the loading zone itself is, I can't quite remember on the drawings. Is it on it's obviously on the alley, but is it on the alley closest to the building next door, or is it on the alley closest to the driveway, the entrance into 16th Street?
Yeah, it's closer to 16th Street, Sarah.
Yeah, it's adjacent to the elevator tower. So they come in right there so they can offload into the elevator tower and make use of that. And it's within our property boundary, not in the alley.
And I'm sorry, just this is still loading zone. You said in the management plan, it's stated in the management plan that if you need a second loading zone, somehow I was kind of left with the impression that there would magically be a second loading zone somewhere. What was that reference in the management plan? It said if you needed a second load, if you found that you needed a second loading zone, I have to pull up the document. I'm sorry. I got to find it. There was a reference to, sorry, too many documents open. I'm not going to be able to find it while we're waiting, but in the management plan, it says if we find that we need a second loading zone, loading dock, and I just didn't know what that was referencing. Was that where you might park your truck? What was that?
This is Dean Hoflick. That was in response to a concern of the neighbors. They were concerned that one loading zone wouldn't be enough. So our response was, well, if the need for a second loading zone would arise, we would work with the city and pay for using a few 16th Street parking spaces as a loading zone temporarily.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that. I just wasn't clear on that. Thank you.
Well,
All right. John.
Yeah, just a real quick question on practical aspects of the layout. Are you expecting each residential unit to have its own washer and dryer, or is there some common laundry facilities available in the building for everybody?
We have a common facility at the lower level, John.
Oh, okay.
Helps free up space in those units.
Okay, just seemed like space is so valuable in a unit of that size. I'd hate to see it being used for something that is only used once a week by somebody, but anyway, thanks.
Our thoughts exactly.
Great. I'll call on myself again. Then I saw that I think that you said that because maybe because this is affordable housing, that you're not planning to charge for parking for residents. I don't if that's the case, that's fine. I guess I'd like just to hear if I read that right. One thing that I just also know that the planning board has become sensitive to is people who are in affordable housing may actually rely on their car for livelihood. So I wondered if you thought of maybe like being able to kind of give preference to in available parking spaces to someone who might need to use their car for their job or their livelihood.
It's a good question, and one that we've been involved in some research on. So the parking is reserved for the residential units. It's not for the event space or the Mercy Ministries. And we worked on a parking study with Fox Tuttle, which is a traffic engineer, along with Shopworks, which is an architecture group based in Denver. And they did a study on parking for affordable housing projects. And in that study, they found that there are 0.29 vehicles per unit, equating to less than 1 vehicle per 6 units for all of the affordable projects that they studied. And especially in a location like we have here, where the downtown bus station is just a block away, Pearl Street is right there. All of the bus transportation around town are available. We felt confident that the parking would be enough to serve the residents here. As to the question about people who use their cars for their livelihood, I think it's an important one. Before I ever commit to anything on these tax credit projects, that's new to me, I like to consult with one of our tax credit attorneys just to make sure we're not promising something that would then be in violation of the tax credits. So I think my response to you is it's a good thought and we'll take it under advisement and let me check with the attorneys so that we don't get in trouble with our tax credits.
Great. Yeah, I think it's something that could be fine-tuned in the management plan as just, you know, I mean, it's not something we have to enforce on our end, but yeah, if it can be a thing that can be figured in as you allocate, because you're clearly going to be allocating parking spaces to only a subset of the residents because of the numbers. Great. Lisa.
Yeah, just to piggyback off that, thank you for bringing it up, David. Just kind of saying yes, you know, one, to make sure that we're not unduly burdening people, especially when we're trying to provide affordable housing and they need a van or they need a car, they need something to be able to get to and from work and do their job. And then coupling that with kind of good transportation demand management, which is already happening to some extent, perhaps with the site, you know, and so I don't know the perfect answer to that, and definitely tax credits will have to come in, but I would just encourage as you kind of look at that and how you want the plan to be in place, that we're not unduly burdening, and that perhaps we're also providing some incentives where appropriate for people to take advantage of the bus system if it's there, you know, to really make sure that those limited parking spots are going to people who most need them, while we're not providing free parking such that it incentivizes additional car ownership, and that we're subsidizing car ownership, for example, if it's not needed. So yeah, tricky. I don't know the answer, but I just wanted to kind of emphasize David's question.
Yeah, it's a great point. And one strategy we've used at other projects is having a car share available. Maybe one of those parking spots or even two of them are used by a car share organization, which then helps the residents become more comfortable with not having a car there.
Great.
We also talked about making sure we have bus passes provided for tenants and available to us. So that's one of the things we'll endow to the tenants.
Great, thank you. More questions. Sarah, go ahead.
So I'm just thinking about I can't remember in the document somewhere you talk about affordable housing and and you mention people who work downtown and students. Now, it's my understanding that BHP's list of affordable housing, the people on the list for permanently affordable housing, students are not eligible. Is that, will you be pulling from that list, or will you be just looking for people who apply, who meet a certain set of criteria?
I think we'll likely have our own list. We work closely with BHP on projects, and where appropriate, we find spots for their residents and they find spots for ours. You know, it's kind of a team effort on this piece. To students specifically, there are very detailed rules around what students or which students are eligible for affordable housing under the tax credit program. And our first job will be to comply with all of those. And a lot of times, you know, just your typical undergrad who's a full-time student is not going to qualify for this type of project. But if there's a part-time student or a graduate student, or even sometimes a student living with a full-time worker, they may be able to qualify there.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
Okay, John, go ahead.
Yeah, in some of the material we were provided for this, there was some back and forth and discussion about how planters are to be used on the top floor. And I wonder if you could clarify what will actually happen. In the drawings you showed tonight, it showed very planters along almost every external edge. But in the discussion, there was appeared to be some reluctance to use planters. And so I'm wondering if you can clarify that.
Yeah, John, we are proposing to have planters along the vast majority of the edge of that fourth floor, along with the residential deck that's immediately adjacent to the third floor neighbor to the east. The exception to that is the very corner of the building. And I don't know, maybe share the screen again and show that to you. But we did pull the planters away from the southwest corner so that folks using the deck could get all the way to the edge and look over downtown. So if you go back one. Here, you can see how planters rim the majority of the fourth floor with the exception of just that corner, which allows folks to get to the edge.
Really for the views, John, and it's just spectacular up there looking to the southwest to the Flatirons and to our lovely Front Range.
Okay, well, I understand the logic, so thanks for that explanation.
Great. All right, any more questions for the applicant at this point? You ready to go on? So before we go on to public comment, so we'll have a few minutes before, and then we'll take a break in about 10 minutes. But before we do that, I've been privileged enough to be the liaison to the Design Advisory Board this year, and Rory Belosikovic, I think I got it right. I actually practiced that 10 times. Was kind enough to come and just give us a little insight into the review that they had back in February. They actually spent about 5 hours. So I thought we would benefit from a little perspective because a pretty large portion of our packet looks at some of the comments on the downtown guidelines and the comments that DAB had. So Rory, if you would like to just share a few thoughts from your perspective, we'd appreciate that.
How's it going, folks?
Hey, welcome.
All right. I think, well, one, I just wanted to be available here this evening in case any sort of questions or further clarity was needed as far as DAB's recommendation and comments from the original proposal. For formality's sake, DAB has not re-reviewed the updated submittal package, so I don't think I'm in a position to opine on the board's behalf as far as DAB's concerned about what you're looking at now. I think generally speaking, on the annex, there's a variety of kind of smaller nip tuck items that are very well detailed that you guys should have kind of enough reference and context along with our commentary to review adequately. And then I would just like to say that generally speaking for the primary site, our biggest kind of comprehensive comment was that do not take the design guidelines so literally that we're creating kind of micro scale expression of facade, that there's beauty in designing and executing an edifice that can occupy the entire block, as would be historic with like the Hotel Boulder, for example. So I think when we were kind of providing that level of interpretation for Josh and his crew, as well as the Coburn folks, which are obviously more familiar with designing in Boulder, I feel like there was smiles and happiness around. I think, the BGW folks wanted to go back to the board and really exercise some additional freedoms that would result in a better project. So I look forward to kind of hearing you guys provide commentary on what you're seeing here and deliberate. And I will have my camera off and I'll be muted, but I will be here. So if there's any sort of question or clarification on any of DAB's comments, I'm more than happy to jump in.
Great. Well, yeah, if you're willing to stay with us, we'd appreciate that. If the board has any questions now, feel free to jump in. That will be key issue number 4. So it will be a little while before we get to it. And I know, John, you were a liaison to DAB to DAB when this was done in February. So thank you for also providing that continuity. All right, well, good, thanks again. So let's go ahead and take a little break and then we're going to do the public comment. What time is it now? 23. Let's try to reconvene at 1/2 just a 7-minute break if we could do that. We'll be starting up in about a minute, and I'll just say for members of the public who are on, if you want to start putting hands up, I'll be calling on people in the order that the hands are up. And there is, I'll just say there is one group of 4 people who asked to go together, which is fine. And so I see Robin Wolf's hand is up. Robin, I'll make sure after I call on you to call on the other 3 people that you've alerted me to that you'd like to kind of go together. That's not hard to do. So as long as you have everybody on, we should be good to go. Let's see, where are we at time-wise? We're at 29 after, so we've still got a moment to go.
David, just to clarify, when we go through the list of folks, they'll each have 3 minutes, correct?
Yes, everybody has 3 minutes. We haven't been pooling time for during the virtual meeting protocols. So everybody gets an individual 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't, yeah. If we get like over 20 participants, sometimes we cut that down, but I think we're going to be under the 20 mark tonight. So we'll go ahead and hear from everybody for 3 minutes. Of course, keeping it to less than 3 minutes is totally appreciated when possible. Okay. I think are we all back? Looks like everybody's back. All right, so let's go ahead and open up the open comment. What will happen is that I'll call on people, and then Jean will allow you to unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Please remember to state your name and either your address or at least the location, neighborhood and city that you live in, just so that we know, what area you are representing. And I'll start with Russ Teets and then Laurel Herndon, followed by Robin Wolf. Russ, go ahead. You should be able to unmute.
Russ, my apologies. I think I muted just as you unmuted.
Okay.
There you go. We can hear you.
Okay, very good. So I'm Russ Teets, and I'm the Director of Local Outreach for Grace Commons Church. And I'm going to talk to about some of the activities that we're currently doing at the Annex and at the main church site that will be done in the redeveloped Annex. And thank you for giving us an opportunity to tell you about some of the things we're doing. So I'll also be talking about things the way they were before COVID-19, because hopefully sometime we'll get back to that. We're still going with these ministries, but a lot of them are grab and go meals rather than having people come inside. And there's some other people involved with the church that will be talking about other things that I'm not talking about. So one of our main outreaches is the Lambs Ministry. And the Lambs Ministry provides a breakfast and a lunch once a week, and also provides a time for fellowship for people in need, mainly people experiencing homelessness. And the Lambs Lunch provides music, a talk, a hot lunch, and a warm place to meet on Saturdays during the cold weather months. So that's November through about March. We're open for 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock. And we've been going since 1996. So this is 25 years of doing that. All the meals are prepared and served at Grace Commons, but there are 4 different churches that rotate the cooking and serving. That's Calvary Bible Church, Rock Creek Church, Casa de Dios Shalom, and Grace Commons. And we normally have been serving between 80 and even up to 130 people at this lunch. We also give out clothes once a month and provide an opportunity for our guests to receive prayer if they want that. Then we also serve a hot breakfast every Thursday morning, very similar to the Lambs Lunch, again, providing a hot meal, a place to get out of the cold, and really a safe and warm place that people can gather and talk to each other. And then there's 2 events that we do as part of the Lambs Ministry. One is the Boulder Foot Wash, which is the season-ending celebration for the Lamb's Lunch. And the other is haircuts for the holidays. And we do pretty much the same thing at both of these events. In addition to washing people's feet, we have a dozen or so people that come in and give haircutters. And the haircutters are either from the Colorado Technical Education Center. So these are seniors in cosmetology, and they need to do some community service. So the teachers like it because they can get the whole class in there and get it done in one morning. And then we also have professional hairstylists that come in to do that. And besides cutting the hair, we wash it beforehand. We provide manicures, we give out clothes and serve a really nice meal that day.
And Russ, that was 3 minutes already, so it's wonderful to hear, but if you could wrap up.
Okay, I'll do that. So some of the other things that I think other people won't be talking about is Casa de Dios Shalom is a Spanish-speaking church, and we provide the space for them to do Sunday worship and some other meetings. The Boy Scouts meet there. And for several years, the Bridge House ran a resource center there at the Annex. And this redeveloped Annex will just enhance our ability to help those that are most vulnerable and need in the city of Boulder.
Great, thank you, Russ, for that. And sorry, we ran out of time, but it's great to hear that. Appreciate it. Okay. So next up is Laurel Herndon, followed by Robin Wolf, and then after Robin, we're going to go with Kevin Eggleston. So Laurel, go ahead. You should be able to unmute.
Good evening, members of the Planning Board. My name is Laurel Herndon, and I am the co-director, along with Belen Pargas Solis, of the Immigrant Legal Center of Boulder County. We are located at 948 North Street in Boulder, just south of the old community hospital. Our organization appreciates the service of Grace Commons Church in providing food and clothing to low-income community members at their central Boulder location. And we heartily endorse this expansion proposal. We have clients who have benefited from services to homeless and low-income residents in the past and would like to see opportunities increased to serve more people. I am passionate about this project because two of my clients, both refugees from Africa, have given up on Boulder in the past 3 years. The men did not know each other. They never crossed paths, but each gave an identical assessment of Boulder. I am not welcome here. Underhoused individuals are vulnerable, powerless, and often have been treated with scorn. Based on our past actions as a community, it is difficult to say that my clients' assessments were inaccurate. So one left to Glenwood Springs and the other to California, making the work of the Immigrant Legal Center significantly more difficult. These two men, one from the Congo and one from South Sudan, were accepted into official U.S. refugee programs. They were brought to the United States and each found his way to Boulder, one in 2015 and the other in 2020. They suffered trauma caused by war and need a supportive setting to help get on their feet. If the Grace Commons expansion project had existed back then, they might have found that supportive setting, affordable housing in a central location with services in the building and easy access to employment at one of the many restaurants currently screaming for help. As we discuss the needs of Afghan refugees who may be coming to our area, let's learn from our shortcomings and build a better system. Boulder residents have voted for a new approach, and Grace Commons expansion is an excellent step in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurel. It is hard to find that unmute button sometimes. Thank you for those comments. Next we have Robin Wolf, and then following Robin, I'll call on folks that wanted to group their commentary with Robin. That will be Kevin Eggleston, Grant Couch, and Scott Heron. And then after that, we'll be continuing with Libby Russell. So go ahead, Robin, you should be able to unmute.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. All right, hello, everybody. My name is Robin Wolf. I'm a board member for the Walnut Condominium HOA, which is adjacent to the church annex. A year ago, some of the applicant team in the city might have thought that our concerns were just a smokescreen to try to prevent the annex from ever being built. It was never a smokescreen. We've always fully supported the vision of affordable housing in this space. The original design just didn't acknowledge the residential scale of the neighborhood or specific privacy concerns of immediate neighbors. We even hired our own architect and sound engineer to try to understand the impact of the annex design. And when we did this, the process became more collaborative. Kudos to the church and Coburn for recognizing the changes needed to be made. We think Coburn has done a really great job on the architectural design. We have only one issue with it. The southwest corner of the annex has 0 setback for attendees standing at the edge overlooking the sidewalk several stories below. A drink or plate could become dangerous if it knocked off the edge. The church says they want attendees to have a visual connection to the church. They can still easily achieve this with a design detail that simply pulls people away from the edge by a few feet. For both sound and safety reasons, we feel this request is entirely appropriate. Our most significant concern is sound, for good reason. The annex is adjacent to us and across the street from the Chamberlain Historic Neighborhood. That is their reality. We have a few important valid concerns we need addressed before we can wholeheartedly support this project. Fortunately, most of our concerns relate only to the annex management plan. So I'll speak to 2 of those concerns now. First, the event space is a novel use. It's not listed in the DT5 district, thus requiring use review. Consistent with Boulder Municipal Code, the annex should have minimal negative impact on the use of nearby residential properties. For this reason, it is essential to us that they abide by residential decibel levels instead of mixed use levels, which are substantially louder. Coburn did sound testing in the neighborhood, but it was done on the 1-story annex roof. A more accurate test could have been done at our boundary on the 4th floor, the same level that the event space will be. They are welcome to repeat the test on our 4th floor green roof. Second, we are really thankful the church has agreed to not install amplification on the outdoor event space. We would like them to clarify this in the management plan by saying no installed or portable amplification outdoors. This would make it crystal clear to the event manager that no portable amplification can be used as well. The specific verbiage in the management plan is very important to us. It represents a clear understanding of the rules the church and the event staff must follow. Thank you all for your time, and thank you especially to the Coburn team for working with us.
Thank you, Robin. And now we'll go with Kevin Eggleston. Kevin, you should be able to unmute.
Yep, thanks. You hear me?
Yes.
Yep, I'm Kevin Eggleston. I'm also a member of the Homeowners Association Board at 1655 Walnut. I'm also a big supporter of the mission that the church has with this new project, and looking forward to seeing it built. My focus is on the alley and, again, noise. The noise from the loading area in the alley is going to be loud for many of our residents who have bedrooms facing the alley, as well as many residents in the Grace Commons Annex new build building. For the mornings, and I know earlier we had a discussion about start times and end times, but for the mornings, we request a start time of 9 instead of 7, consistent with Chautauqua. If we understand Chautauqua's rules correctly, we think that being where they're located, next to residences, applying their rules would to this development would be appropriate. So consistent with Chautauqua, with the option to use the loading zone at 8 for preparation for a 9 a.m. event start time. And for the evenings, since I guess that during the weekends we have to live with the 10 p.m. closing time, Thursday through Sunday. Again, consistent with Chautauqua's quiet time hours, we'd like loading to cease by 10:30. That's still pretty late for people with bedrooms facing the loading area. If we can't come to an agreement on this, We request that you either use 16th Street for loading zone activity, as referenced earlier in the conversation, after 10, and back the truck into the loading zone. So the rear of the truck faces 16th Street and not the east side. So the loading happens on the other end of the truck away from the residents on the alley. Regarding snow removal in the alley, I know there was a mention of this, but it doesn't seem like there's a real clear plan or understanding of what needs to be done. It's clear that the city isn't going to be clearing the snow from the alley. And so it's important that there's a specific plan put in place by Grace Commons to remove that snow. It accumulates here fast and becomes a real problem for the residents. And just make sure that you clear the snow to the west and not to the east, of course. And then I'll just make one last side comment. There was a discussion about transportation and cars and buses and all of that. We provide our residents with an eco-pass that's used by a lot of our residents. I'd encourage the church to do the same for their residents as well, to encourage use of the buses and to address some of the transportation issues that I'm sure they're going to face. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, now we will go with Grant Couch, followed by Scott Heron. And after that, we'll hear from Libby Russell. Grant, you should be able to unmute.
Thank you. I think I am.
You are.
And I first want to just give a sincere thanks to the planning board and staff for the service in this area. I know it isn't easy handling so many different points of view, some of which might seem a little nitpicky, but important for those of us that have to live with this ongoing. And I want to repeat what Robin and Kevin said. And by the way, I'm Grant Couch and a past board member of 1655 Walnut, and happily live downtown and love all of the amenities. And like Kevin and Robin, I'm very hopeful that the annex succeeds. I think affordable housing is definitely necessary, and the Mercy Ministries are serving a function that is needed. I appreciate that. Unfortunately, in our experience, the Grace community has not always been the most respectful or responsive neighbor around the noise issue. Thus, our particular concern about addressing this in a most detailed way. It's important, therefore, that the O&M plan is clear about what's allowed and what's not. And there is some comfort in seeing that in the plan that they're going to require that events coordinator will be on premises during all events, and that contact information will be shared with the city and nearby neighbors. But to be clear, we hope we never need to see or contact the events coordinator. Our strong preference is that the church is self-policing and a respectful neighbor, and our most important concern is noise. So to that, I want to just spend a little detail a little bit more on the noise question and follow up on what Robin said. It was nice to see in the presentation this evening, quote, "No outside amplification will be installed." I think it needs to be very clear that that means permanent, temporary, or portable. And some of the operating plans we've seen reference to music. I think it's important that it includes voice with regard to speeches or talks or anything like that, so that the event space is truly only acoustic. I think also I appreciate that in the operating plan, they do require that the folding doors on the indoor space be closed in the event of amplified music inside. I would ask that they add that they close the windows as well so they can keep the noise from expanding. And I think just as well, to repeat on Robin's request for the 55 decibel level, we live in a quiet neighborhood. And I don't think just because sometimes it goes up to 60 or 65 that we need to have the church be allowed to have that as a standard. But again, thank you for listening, and thank you for your service.
Okay, thank you, Grant. Okay, now we will go with Scott Heron, and Scott will be followed by Libby Russell. You should be able to unmute, Scott.
Thank you. I'm Scott Heron, also a resident of 1655 Walnut. I'd also like to begin by commending applicant for the progress made since the original design submission, and to thank Planning Department, Board, and the Design Advisory Board for their efforts in bringing this close to approval. The process has worked well. First, I believe that some renderings, and I'm going to comment on 3 points. First, I think some of the renderings in the submissions might be older and not fully conform to the drawings and email confirmations among the parties, including at the interface of Annex Unit 307 with 1655 Walnut. That interface occurs at my home. I appreciate the changes that were implemented that Pete alluded to earlier. There's one open item. There was an email communication with Coburn that confirmed on October 22nd that the plan submitted included a solid opaque screen on the east edge of the patio of Unit 307. The current design includes a louvered wall, so that discrepancy should be corrected. Second, I'd like to add my comments to the discussion about the prior understanding there would be no amplification of any sort on the 4th floor outdoor space. It seems, I'm not sure, but it does seem that applicant is now reluctant to confirm that portable amplification would be prohibited. I personally had 2 conversations with Coburn in which the understanding that there would be no amplification at all outdoors was confirmed. In fact, the management plan was resubmitted immediately after our October 26th conversation to confirm this. Any suggestion now that the ban on outdoor amplification is somehow more limited would be backtracking and simply just doesn't make sense. The term temporary installation is common, so the current language, which reads no outside amplified audio will be installed, already prohibits amplification, even if not permanently installed. And there are very large and loud portable amplifiers and speakers available. To suggest that the event space might be able to circumvent the language in the current management plan simply by using such portable amplification would essentially render the current language meaningless, which was clearly not the intent. Finally, the fact that applicant might consider such an interpretation makes it clear that the language in the plan needs to be more definitive so that such an incorrect reading is not considered in the future. My last topic concerns documentation regarding the elimination of the original residence amenity deck that was on the southeast corner of the 4th floor. As noted earlier, this was an extremely controversial component of the original design, and we appreciate that this feature was eliminated. There is now what is referenced as a low roof in that space on which it is agreed there is to be no activity. Our concern is that some years out, new management unfamiliar with the history might look to repurpose that space. We need to make certain that any approval makes clear that this area cannot be used and cannot be repurposed in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, and now we'll go with Libby Russell, followed by Dr. Beth Mazzola, and then Joe Test. Libby, you should be able to unmute.
Super. Good evening, Planning Board. My name is Libby Russell. I reside near Cedar and 19th in Boulder. I'm a covenant partner of Grace Commons and a member of the local missions team. In this role, I am leading the business development plan for the Second Chance Employment Program that is planned for the Annex ground floor cafe and bakery. My commentary tonight is with respect to the gracious asset this business will be to the Boulder community. The bakery and cafe will provide employment and skilled vocational training to a yet to be determined vulnerable population within Boulder. Examples of populations that we are considering include at-risk young adults, individuals in rehab, and folks that are in affordable housing or just coming off the street. The mission of the bakery and cafe is to provide an opportunity and environment to train individuals that have employment aspirations in the culinary and food service industry. We would be developing a comprehensive 9-month training program focused on baking and food service. This program will be limited to a small cohort of students that will progress through the stages of training, eventually leading to graduation and future long-term employment. And then the cohort would go on and we would bring in a new cohort, or that there would be overlapping teams going through the training program. A component of the program will be a weekly seminar that will cover complementary skills and workshops covering topics such as resume writing, personal finances, job searching, and interviewing. In addition to being a tremendous resource for a vulnerable population, it would also be a community network business. We would partner with a local nonprofit that would provide complimentary support to the trainees to ensure a holistic program for them. We would also partner with local chefs and restaurants to bring in skilled teachers and showcase the chef and associated restaurant. A component of this would be community dinners, where a chef partners with a graduating trainee to exhibit their learned culinary skills and demonstrate to the community members aptitude that would lead to long-term employment locally. Then last but not least, as a bakery and cafe, we hope that we would be a loved downtown business bolstering the Love Boulder mission. Our business plan has components to it that would be unique to the Boulder downtown cafes, with the intention to be a successful business and a gem amongst the already outstanding cafes and restaurants. Thank you for your time and attention, and I hope these business plans and all the opportunities associated with the Annex get you excited for great development within the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Libby. Okay, we will now go with Dr. Beth Mazzola, followed by Joe Test, and then George Burke.
Hello, hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Great. My name is Dr. Beth Mazzola. I work with Clinica Family Health, which is also People's Clinic here in Boulder. I also live here in South Boulder. I started a street medicine program about 6 years ago with a mission to bring medical care to the homeless, both in the shelters and the unsheltered homeless. And about 4 to 5 years ago, I partnered up with Deacon's Closet. So I just wanted to give a comment about Deacon's Closet, which is right below the cafe in your plans, to let you know what's going on in Deacon's Closet, and that it's really actually not just a closed closet, but it's actually a life-saving ministry. It does 3 things for life-saving ministry. It has critical medical care, which I do, and I'll talk to you about it. It also gives clean clothes, camping gear, coats and socks that help people so they won't freeze to death. And then lastly, it saves lives with housing, because there is a huge collaboration in Deacon's Closet with a lot of different organizations to get housing for people, and we are very successful with that. So expanding just for a second, the critical medical care that myself and my nurse give, we actually show up at Deacon's. The volunteers, which are absolutely amazing, have a table for us ready to go. We have a walk-up clinic, and the unsheltered homeless, which are extremely hard to find, they're very elusive. They have a lot of medical issues that they don't address. They actually come and talk to us there. And so we're able to find them. I've done things like treat severe infections, treat broken bones, give medications to stabilize mental illness, call 911 when needed. A lot of them very important things. Then also, Deacon's Closet gives a lot of clean clothes and camping gear, and the folks that come and get it have a lot of ADHD and traumatic brain injury. They lose or get stolen their gear all the time, and without Deacon's Closet, they would definitely freeze to death. And then there's housing for the folks that we get through collaboration with the Justice Center, with BHP, which is Boulder Housing Partners, with Mental Housing Partners. It's amazing what we do there. So I just wanted you to know that it's really not just a closed closet, it's real vital ministry that does save lives. And for the folks that are the neighbors, there'll be a lot of people there that collaborate and also that go there on Thursdays, but that it's something that I hope you value and that you really realize how important it is. And I pray that you too will really enjoy it and come by if you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Okay, now we'll go with Joe Test and then George Berg, followed by Rosie Fivian. Joe, you should be able to unmute.
Hi there, this is Joseph Hansel. I am with HVS Convention Sports and Entertainment Facilities Consulting. We're a public assembly consulting firm based out of Chicago, and we were tasked by Grace Commons to take a look at the potential feasibility of the 4th floor meeting and event space at the Annex site. While performing our analysis, we completed a variety of tasks, including key informant interviews, as well as an assessment of comparable and competitive facilities across Boulder, while also engaging in direct stakeholder interviews with members of the community, members of representative facilities, members of competitive facilities, and then as well, members of tourism and economic development across the city. The ultimate determination of our analysis was that the 4th floor Grace Commons site is a potential benefit to the community as it pertains to the meeting and events industry within Boulder. It is positioned well in the downtown corridor and off of Pearl Street to specifically capture additional demand that may exist in Boulder at present. The benefit to the community in terms of the fourth floor event space, as well as the affordable housing component in our key informant interviews, cannot be understated, as it specifically was mentioned by almost every party that we spoke to, that the inclusion of affordable housing and the inclusion of the fourth floor event space provides a unique opportunity for visitors to Boulder, but also provides a necessary community asset that can be specifically used by nonprofit groups as well as other groups within Boulder for social events. For that reason, our analysis ultimately concluded that the fourth floor event space could be of a great benefit to the Boulder community. And that's about that.
Okay, thank you so much, Joe. We appreciate that. And so next we'll go with George Berg, followed by Rosie Vivian, and then Aaron Palmer. George, you should be able to unmute.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can.
All right. I'm an attorney with Berg, Hill, Greenleaf, and Rashidi, and we have our law firm offices at the corner of 17th and Pearl, which is just around the corner to the east and 1 block north of the project. And we are in tremendous support of the project, not just because of the social impact, which we believe will be amazingly beneficial to the community in our particular locale, but because we think it's a tremendous improvement on the area in terms of improving the quality of the local office structure and providing benefits for the people that I see every day when I drive to work and every night when I drive home. And the social impact, we believe, will be tremendous for the area. We believe that any noise impact can be mitigated in the manner that has been discussed by other people tonight. And we are in tremendous support of this. We have owned our building at the corner of 17th and Pearl for approximately 15, 16 years now. We have been seriously involved in the Pearl Street corridor, the business corridor for Pearl Street. And I think that the business community, from everything that I have heard, and certainly from our perspective, is in support of this project and can't imagine a better use for the property than what is being suggested.
Thank you, George. All right, let's go now with Rosie Vivian, followed by Aaron Palmer, and then Derinda Academy. Rosie, you should be able to unmute.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
Hi there, I'm speaking in strong support of this project. I took the time out tonight to speak, not for myself, but for the people who may not have the means to be here tonight or to hire professionals to advocate on their behalf. I've donated clothing to the Deacon's Closet before and appreciate all they do for our community. I hope the planning board will consider above all else how desperately we need affordable housing downtown and citywide. Please see and weigh the many benefits for the city and the greater good above the fear of change or what may or may not occur. I think the applicants have worked hard to address the concerns of the neighbors, staff, DAB, by achieving a balance between these concerns and processes and the financial realities of making the project viable. I believe the scale and massing of the proposed building fits within its context. In fairness, I think the roof deck design considerations should be consistent with others downtown. What comes to mind is Avanti and Rosetta Hall. I also support the parking reduction, firmly believing that current parking standards are outdated. We need to think big picture here and consider the downtown location and a future with less design for cars and more design for housing people. This project is extremely important for Boulder. The process has already been long and thorough. I hope this project can be approved without delay. Thanks.
Thank you, Rosie. We'll go to Erin Palmer now, followed by Derinda Academy, and then Spencer Downing. You should be able to unmute.
Good evening, Planning Board. My name is Erin Palmer. I'm a resident in Lafayette and a full-time employee on East Pearl Street in downtown Boulder. As a full-time event planner, I'd like to speak directly to the fourth floor event space and its potential benefit to the Boulder community. I'm well networked with several premier event planners on the Front Range, and the resounding sentiment from sharing the news of this potential project has been great excitement to see this event deck come to life, to drive energy to the downtown corridor. Really, the phrase that I've gotten over and over is, it's about time. A structure like this is unique in a twofold manner: a Flatirons view that really only few rooftop spaces can boast of, along with an indoor component that protects guests from the elements such as the gale force gusts we witnessed yesterday. Really, what I'd like to speak to is that when one business thrives in downtown, it creates a trickle-down impact that allows many to thrive. So I really encourage this development. I think it would bring a lot of life to the downtown corridor, and I would be really excited to see it to come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Okay, next we'll go with Derinda Academy, followed by Spencer Downing and Matt Berry. You should be able to unmute now, Derinda.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Derinda Academy, and I am a co-moderator of the Deacon's Closet Ministry of Grace Commons Church. And I'm speaking, of course, in support of the application for the use of the annex. Currently, I live in Broomfield. I miss Boulder, but I come back for church, and I am a deacon at our church. As it seems like you already know, Deacon's Closet is primarily an outreach ministry, supplementing the incomes of the poor and displaced in downtown Boulder. We're mostly a clothing ministry, but we also provide a variety of goods free of charge. We also, and this is the important thing you've heard from a couple of speakers, our collaboration is what makes us incredible. Not only do we collaborate with the People's Clinic, Dr. Beth Mazzoli, who you've just heard from, but also mental health partners, the court navigators from the city attorney's office, social workers from the shelter system, hospitals and jails, as well as the homeless outreach team of the city police, among others, and all with a goal of helping people to lift people up and in our society today. I'm in my third year as co-leader of the Deacon's Closet, and as such, I've learned about the rich history and how deep is our outreach into the community. While the Deacon's Closet has operated in one form or another for 75 years, it's been at the Annex for 30 years, since we outgrew the space in the main church. In the 1990s, a daily camera report of Deacon Closet's response to evacuees from a major fire brought much attention to us. Several downtown churches folded their used clothing ministries into ours, and we grew. We currently welcome a weekly average of 80 guests in the summer and 100 in the winter to the Annex. Our record right now is 162 people in the hour and a half we serve on Thursday mornings. In addition, we reach out to our community schools and to guests who schedule appointments. Most recently, we were contacted by the Red Cross and by area churches the morning of the Whittier fire. We were honored to serve over 34 people who lost all their belongings in that fire. Several of those people have paid it forward and resupplied us later with donations that they received from friends and family. The experiences of donor and donee alike are incredible. We are recipients of donations from our church community as well as private Boulder retailers and nonprofits. Last year, we received a donation of 2 truckloads of new clothing from a local warehouse. And for over a decade, we have been the recipient of the Coats for Colorado drive collected by our own Boulder dependable cleaners, which brings in over 1,000 to 3,000 coats every year. I do hope the planning board will move forward with the vision project to ensure the future of the Deacon's Closet in the renovated annex space. I hope you will rejoice with us when this is accomplished. With the day that the unhoused gets housing, the sick get treatment, and just like the interviewees I had today, they got the new job because of the outfits we supplied them. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you, Derinda. Okay, next we'll go with Spencer Downing and followed by Matt Berry and then Randy Bear. You should be able to unmute.
Thanks. I'm Spencer Downing. I'm the interim executive director of the Boulder Shelter for the Homeless. And with that role, you can imagine that I absolutely support and celebrate the addition of more affordable housing to Boulder. And I am especially excited about the partners who are involved in that project. Affordable housing is fantastic, but affordable housing that takes into account the way that a city can flourish by involving all kinds of things, including event spaces, including services for the people that I serve, but also for other populations. And working to integrate that into a healthy community is exactly the kind of thing that I want to support. I want to speak specifically to questions that Sarah Silver raised, and I think rightfully so, but I would encourage you all to think about the people and the organizations that are represented with this project. Grace Commons has demonstrated themselves to be a thoughtful and comprehensive thinking approach. They follow comprehensive approaches to problems that confront the whole community. I worked at one of the businesses that shared an alley with them. I found them to be amazing neighbors. I found them to be the kind of people that I wanted to be in a community with. And by the same token, Element Properties, just 2 nights ago, I dropped a 71-year-old man with multiple disabilities who lives at Trinity Commons and said, this is the best place to live. And that's the kind of thing that I think you can expect from the partners that are developing this project. So as the interim executive director of the Boulder Shelter for the Homeless, I celebrate this project. As somebody who wants to live in a great place, I absolutely support this project and I encourage you to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Spencer. Okay, next we're going with Matt Berry, followed by Randy Bear and then Lynn Siegel. Matt, you should be able to unmute.
Great, can you hear me?
We can.
All right, thanks. My name is Matt Berry and I'm a member of Grace Commons Church and I own a structural engineering firm here in Boulder, and by which I was asked to be on an oversight board that got to watch all of these professionals develop this design. And one of the things that our church wanted to do, like everyone said, is open our church and our facilities up to the community. That includes our neighbors. And I can sleep well at night knowing that before the neighbors even knew that we were going along with this project, that we were considering the impact on everybody around us. So the other item I want to mention is that I recently moved my firm's office from Gun Barrel to 17th and Pearl, only a block north of here. And it's projects like this are why I did that. I want my team to be involved in their community. I don't want them to be commuters. So, this opportunity that we have to have our events here. And when I say our events, we're involved in professional societies, and I've been driving to Denver for the same breakfast meeting every month, and I'm ready for it to be in Boulder. And one of the neatest things is to see someone developing work skills on the first floor as part of their internship, delivering pastries to a breakfast meeting on the 4th floor of the Colorado Bar Association, and sandwiched in between that are 2 floors of affordable housing. I can't think of a better way to to be involved with our community. So I just want to say that just as a member of somebody who gets to watch over all of this process, is that you've really been in good hands, and they're really doing their best to make sure that everything, all parties get heard. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, we'll go with Randy Bear, followed by Lynn Siegel next. Randy, you should be able to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
My name is Randy Bear, and I'm currently the transitional lead pastor at Grace Commons. I live in Boulder, across from the main library. I've been a pastor in Berkeley, California, Madison, Wisconsin, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and West Palm Beach, Florida. And in each case, those have been challenging situations for churches in the community to work together. So I just want to say amen to all of the comments that have come along tonight, because it really is impressive that the church that I'm serving in a transitional way and the community are coming together to serve the wider good. So I'm just wanted to say amen, and what has been already said a lot of the things that I would add to that. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. All right. So Lynn Siegel is the last person I see on the participants list with a hand up. So if anyone else has been trying, there is the Q&A. You can let Jean or Cindy know in the Q&A if you're having any technical issues. But otherwise, right now, Lynn is the last person. Oh, we have one more. So just we'll go on to anybody else that puts their hand up. Lynn, you should be able to unmute.
Now, I really know what it's like to live in Colorado, because it's now 22 degrees. I'm looking at the thermometer outside of my window that I'm 5 feet from, and it's about 40 degrees in my house. And my thermostat's set to 54, but the new part of the house has no heating. So my fingers are really cold from typing all the administrative things that I really don't want to be dealing with. I want to deal with what's the issue at hand. Now, 475-foot ELUs is not a good model. Now, I know that you are getting LIHTC funds, whatever, Boulder Housing Partners, whatever. This is where the federal government is supporting. It's like they're supporting a drug dependency for the city of Boulder to grow. You have to have 30 units or we won't look at you. This is not okay. It's pushing growth on Boulder because we get this stuff free and we need all this affordable housing. There's a huge network here. What Sarah said is right. What is this? Element? I've seen Element all over town. I think Element is, now that I think of it, at 3rd and Pearl, that new ultra high expense condos, the condos on 21st and Pearl, Coburn, it's all this tight network. Coburn on 26th, 27th and Spruce, the condos at Pine and Folsom. It's just endless. It's on and on. Andy Allison with the bus stop, and he's got Mackenzie Junction, and he's working with Michael Bosna, who's doing 311, which is the highest end housing in Boulder, which is driving up the cost of everything. It's like a perfect machine to drive the demand for more affordable housing by this upper end stuff. And it's a fine tapestry, an intricate tapestry of how this works. These, Andy Allison, along with Element, they're all working on each other's behalf. It's just not okay for this community. This is not okay. The Fox Tuttle issue, 0.29 vehicles per unit. Fox Tuttle screwed up on CU South with their traffic measure there, which they took during the pandemic so that it would look really low traffic to push CU. There are so many drug pushers in this town. They're not, there's plenty of other drug pushers too, from the affordable housing and the homelessness crisis that arises from all of this and that we can never keep up with, never, no matter what. But there are drug pushers like Fox Tuttle and like Element and like every other name of, I mean, I had to go down to the assessor's office to find these LLCs, and all I got was addresses. I went to Rachetti and Greenleaf's office, and that's how I found out that W.W. Reynolds is the guy who took over all the thrift store and the art place and the dance place at 21st and Pearl. I would have never known. W.W. Reynolds. W.W. Reynolds is on Folsom and Pearl. That everybody's connected. You can count on one finger the developers in this town that are benefiting off of all of this quote unquote affordable housing. The smaller units need to be MARPA based housing because that's really efficient. Now I know that they have the washer dryers in a central place, but there is a stove for one person or two people in all of the development in this thing. And it's simply because the partners, the coordinators of this type of housing are demanding stuff that should not be on. It's on the federal level. You're never going to change it. You need to do something here in Boulder and just say no.
Lynn, we need to wrap up. Thank you, Lynn. Okay. All right. So next we're on to Macon Coles. Macon, you should be able to unmute. And again, if there's anybody else, please do put your hand up. Otherwise, Macon will be our last speaker tonight. Macon.
Good evening, Planning Board. First, I want to talk about the Annex here. And first, I want to tip my hat to the fabulous design of this building. The placement, the size, the verticality of the windows, the lintels and the sashes, the bright materials. These all are engaging the street. And like the mission that is performed within by people from Grace Commons Church, they invite both an entry into the building, but also they invite people to go out into the community and lift up other people. This architectural design contributes to the sense of wonder about what goes on within the building and the generosity of the church in offering this great structure and these wonderful services to our community. I want to address some points made by the neighbors. First, starting with the request that the time that the alley is used be shortened more to like the times that are observed in Chautauqua, or that decibel limits be limited to those in a residential district. DT5, in which not only the Annex is located, but also the Walnut, which had so many neighbors testifying tonight, is the highest density zoning district we have in the central part of our town. And so while it may be quiet from time to time, it wasn't meant to be quiet. And that's why the decibel limit is set at 65. It encompasses the fact that there's going to be activity and action and fun, celebrations, sometimes some noises that approach the decibel level. But there is absolutely nothing in the site review criteria of 9-2-14 that would permit you to regulate this like a residential zone. Honestly, it is unfair to compare the Walnut to the Chamberlain Historic District, to the RL district that is across the street. This is DT5, and you have to respect the use and the zoning criteria and the site review criteria that are attached to that district. Finally, I want to address this business about snow removal and the request in the alley. There's not another property owner in this city that is required to remove snow from a public alley. And the request by the people in the Walnut that the church be saddled with this is just unfathomable. All of us who live downtown have to deal with snow in our alleys. I live downtown. I have an alley that's not even paved, unlike the alley we're talking about here. But neither the city nor the church should be responsible for doing something, being tagged with snow removal. It only seems like an attempt to squash this project or disable it in some way. So let's celebrate what the church wants to do, continue doing, and bring to this community. And please approve the Grace Commons. What a wonderful design and a wonderful contribution to our city.
Thank you, Macon. So if we don't have any more hands, I'm looking here, just scrolling around to make sure there isn't a hidden hand. No, I think that's it for our open comment section of this public hearing. So thank you, everybody. We really appreciate all of your engagement and you taking the time to join us in the evening to give your comments. So now is the time where we can ask the applicant to please respond to anything you've heard during this public comment that you'd like to respond to. Go ahead.
Thanks, David. I think there's just one thing that I wanted to mention on the heels of the commentary by Scott Heron. If there was any inconsistency in the communication from our group to our neighbors to the east, it was unintentional. This has been a bit of a back and forth kind of moving target kind of thing for us. And so if there has been, again, been any inconsistency, it was not intentional. Anything else, Doug?
Yeah, just a couple things. One, again, on operating hours, our goal is to be mindful of the neighbors and be like those other downtown businesses that open early but are generally quiet. We don't anticipate a lot of unloading and loading. We're talking about pre-function ideas like catering that has to be delivered and those kind of things. So we want to be mindful of that. So if it's a 7:30 start that we need to be, we're happy to agree to something like that. So we certainly want to acknowledge that. And in snow removal, we'll take responsibility for getting snow in our space. We do now, and we expect that to be our responsibility going forward. So that was the only two things I wanted to mention.
All right, well, thank you. So with that, then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and we'll be going to deliberation. Is everyone okay pressing on for, we've been a little less than an hour since the last break. So if people are okay, we'll start with deliberation and see how far we get. So we've, and of course, the city staff and the applicant and Roy are with us still. So if we have any more clarifications during deliberation, we may call on people. So we have 4 key issues. Let's go ahead and try to keep our discussion within the 4 key issues framework. The first one is the proposed project consistent with the site review criteria? So in this one, we'll be talking about BVCP policies. We'll be talking about any height modifications, setback modifications, and also parking reduction and transportation management. I think all fall into here. Anyone want to kick us off in this section? I'm always happy to go first if no one is raising their hand. Okay, well, in general, I think that the package showed that this project really meets the site review criteria quite well. The BVCP policies in place at concept review time, I think the board agreed that it met the BVCP policies at that time, so I haven't seen anything change between concept review and site review. I think that it's pretty clear that this project meets the community benefits requirements for the height modifications, and I don't see any setback reductions that I find troubling at all. Parking reduction has the transportation management plan that we asked for has been done. I think it makes sense. I like the fact that the applicant is open to looking for special needs of particular residents that might have car needs. So I love that. There's a lot of good open space on the site, the site, not the annex, the church site, and a lot of kind of interesting street activation. And Yeah, that's my, I don't really have anything of concern. So I'd be interested in hearing if other board members want to chime in. If
For the
not,
sake of efficiency, I echo those comments as well.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you. All right. Well, let's go on to key issue number 2, which is the proposed event space use consistent with the use criteria?
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody had their hand up. Who did?
John.
Oh, John. I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think you made the points well, and I agree with them.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Great. Okay. Well, then let's go on to key issue number 2. Is the proposed event space use consistent with the use review criteria? Anyone want to kick us off on the event space discussion? Sarah, go ahead.
So first, I just want to applaud the applicant and the neighbors for obviously working hard together on this. It does seem like they've made a lot of progress, and maybe there's a couple of inches more that that could be addressed. I really appreciate the applicant saying they'd be willing to have a start time of 7:30. I realize it's only a half an hour, but that half an hour, if your bedroom happens to be in this new building and over the loading dock or down the alley, over the alley, a 7 o'clock loading time might seem a little early. So if 7:30 is an option, I would be in support of a condition that adds that to or changes that in the management plan. And in terms of the sound, you know, I thought that the sound graph that Peter showed us was very helpful. Although I wasn't 100% sure. There was a green line that was below, way below 55 decibels for most of the time of the day long monitoring. And then there were these other 2 lines that were basically between 55 and 65, except for sometimes when it went above, the one time it went above 65 and it was a siren. And I guess my concern is the hope that the church has is that this event space will be used a lot, because you're relying on the revenue stream to help subsidize the costs associated with building the building and operating the building. And if I were a neighbor, a constant or maybe it's not constant, but that's a lot of noise. If it's 3 or 4 days a week, sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the evening, and I would urge a decibel level closer to the 55, even though that's not what's allowed or not what's required in the DT zones, because it has become what was there back when it was just industrial area or business area has now become a residential neighborhood, including the new residents of this new building. And I think you would want to make it acceptable residential noise level for the comfort of your residents, but also of the neighbors. So I'm just putting that out there. I don't know how it can be if it can be a condition or if it's even something that you can agree to, but I just want to put that on the table.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Anyone want to go next? Go ahead, John.
Yeah, to follow up on Sarah's comment, I have to say I still don't understand what is being proposed with respect to the use of the event space on the 4th floor and amplification. I understand there's been discussions between the neighbors and and the project proponent here, but I am unclear about what the present proposal in front of us is with respect to that. Could either staff or somebody from the project team describe that?
So you're looking for kind of a description of the programmatic expectations of that space.
Well, there's been some discussion about amplification and whether permanent systems or temporary systems or music or speech, and it's unclear to me what is being proposed.
So this is the excerpt from the management plan, and it describes no outside amplified audio will be installed, and that only acoustic non-amplified music may be performed in the outdoor space, and use of an interior house sound system only. Outdoor amplification will not be installed, and all outdoor music will be stopped or moved indoors at 8 p.m. So I believe the point is there's no amplified music outside.
Well, I mean, this looks like it's very carefully worded to avoid the question of whether, portable system is used and whether speeches count as amplified music. I don't think it is, but somehow the wording here doesn't seem to cover that. Can you clarify that?
It was our view that the interior house system, sound system only means that you can only use the house sound system. But I suppose if you wanted to enhance that, you could add a caveat that, only, well, this specifically says only acoustic music may be performed in the outdoor space, non-amplified. But if you wanted to somehow beef it up, you could indicate that outdoor amplification will not be installed or portable music amplification, if that would help.
Could we hear from the applicant as to whether your intent that would cover portable amplification outside as well? I mean, is that something that you would like to be able to use and that's why it reads this way, or because I think that was a question that came up.
Yes, I mean, I think we'll be really clear. We're not intending to amplify any music outside, full stop. That was our agreement. But secondly, if we have a wedding outside or a bar mitzvah or something outside on the deck and the speaker needs to be heard, we'd like to have the right to do that. We think that's only appropriate. If we have a pastor that's leading in wedding vows out there, those that are attending should be able to hear him pronounce the vows and pronounce that on the participants. So the officiant for any of those should be able to be heard. That's all we're asking for. We know those are all going to be well within the prescribed limits of the zoning, and we are absolutely committed to meeting those zoning requirements. And we'll take proactive means to make sure we meet those limits. But I think asking us to have no amplification, even for an officiant at a wedding, is just beyond the pale.
Thank you for being straightforward with that answer. Hella, did you want to comment on this line of discussion?
I was just going to suggest if you didn't want to allow any amplification outside, you could just add a condition that states no sound shall be amplified in the outdoor space, if that is the direction you wanted to go.
So John, did you want to follow that question more, or did that at least clarify for you where we're at?
It clarifies the attitudes of the applicant. Yes, thank you. I'd like to hear my colleagues on the planning board's thoughts on this.
Well, I'd be glad to go next if nobody else wants to, or if somebody else wants to go next, that would be fine. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think that we have seen a lot of progress in the Good Neighbor Agreement and the management plan. And I also think, I try to read up a little bit on 65 versus 55 decibels. And 65 decibels is really kind of conversational. level. And I think that when I look at the zoning, I find it a little hard to get on the page of just putting restrictions on that aren't supported by the zoning, because we really want to be fair. So 65 doesn't seem like a bad setting for a mixed use area of this type. And you know, we all know that somebody's going to be using a leaf blower or a lawnmower near us, and we have sounds from time to time, but I don't anticipate, you know, I wouldn't anticipate that this would be out of the limits for this particular type of area in DT5. I appreciate that the applicant is, oh, sorry. I appreciate that the applicant would offer up a half hour in the morning. I don't know if we need to condition that. I mean, again, we don't really have a criteria to drive, you know, pushing back at that level. And I also think that, gosh, as someone who hosts a yearly liquor permitted garden party in my backyard every year, I bring a tiny amplifier for the speeches. And and if it was deliberate to leave out those portable amplifiers, I'm not so sure that I support limiting these folks not to use those for those speeches. So I guess I'm kind of resting. At my opinion, would have me resting at a place where I'm not so sure that I would feel like we need to do conditions. But I'll hear everybody's opinion, and we can see if there's one or two that we think are necessary. More opinions? Lupita?
Thank you, Dave. Well, I was waiting to just kind of give my opinion on this, because I do think that the type of activities that are expected to take place in this location really are of the kind that we will consider wholesome. And so thank you, Doug, for picking good examples of what will happen at that space. I really do think that the zoning is perfectly fine. And for that level of noise, I don't think it will be out of hand. However, I'm even more, it appears to me, after all the comments, that the applicant and the neighbors have been able to work very well together. I have no doubt that should something be, you know, out of place or not at the level that the community is acceptable, or that is acceptable to the community, that they will not be able to come out to yet another agreement. I think that we're dealing with, you know, people who have shown good faith on both ends. So I like to think that that will continue. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Lupita. Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick because I think I'm echoing what other planning board members have said, but you know, to the extent that the use indeed would be something like brief amplification of, you know, people speaking officiants or other speeches or anything like that, as opposed to, for example, amplified music over some time, maybe pushing right up against the noise ordinance. That seems completely reasonable, and I don't really see a need to condition it. And then to echo what Lupita said, it seems like the parties have been able to work together overall well so far. And I would hope and anticipate that that would continue, both that, you know, people would raise issues if they come to pass, and that, you know, the church and other operating folks, once it's built out, would, you know, take those seriously, and perhaps they will not come before a future planning board. I think that's always our wish. You know, so yeah, at this point, I don't necessarily see a need to put anything specific on, but again, that's under the assumption that the good communication and the good back and forth that's currently occurring moves forward.
Thank you, Lisa. Let's go with Peter. Go ahead.
I agree with David, Lisa, and Lupita. And as I've said before, the hardest part of this is that there are folks who feel the consequences of certain activities, but given the zoning and where this is downtown and the decisions we've all made as a community, that this is where intensity is to be allowed, I'm okay with what we have here. And I expect that these groups will continue to work well together to resolve, normal course of business compromises that come up.
Thank you, Peter. John, you had your hand up.
Yeah, well, I think I agree with you, frankly. I appreciate the clarification that staff and the project proponent gave in terms of the operating agreement and intentions, and I think that there should be, that this is a reasonable proposal that we're dealing with, so I intend to support it.
Thank you, John. All right. Well, I'm hearing pretty good support for what is proposed here in key issue number 2. So thank you for that. Any last comments, or shall we move on to key issue number 3? All right. Key issue number 3 is, are the proposed efficiency living units, which are greater than 40% of the total dwelling units, consistent with the use review criteria? Any comments on that? All right. Well, I can certainly, this is one thing that the chair does. If people don't have, you feel like you have to say a few things on behalf of the board. So I will say that the board does look at housing types a lot. And there has been a lot of noticing of smaller units in Boulder. So I know that, that does reach our, people look at that and they want and think about that. But I think in this case, we're looking at a DT5 zone really close to a lot of transport and a lot of services. Like have been said, people don't, a lot of people who need jobs in this area are the type of people who may want to live in a smaller space. So I think that given the location, it really is certainly defensible for all the reasons that were said tonight, to have a greater than 40% ELU mix in this particular proposal. So I think I'm pretty comfortable with it. Anybody want to add some additional observation? You good? All right, great. So finally, key issue 4. And this one, I really I put up a concept review, and then I tried to put up what Dab looked at. Just to kick off key issue 4, which is our project plans consistent with the downtown design guidelines. I was pretty impressed with the evolution of this design. What I'm seeing now addresses an awful lot of the comments that we said initially. That corner was kind of like this prow, if you remember, that everybody was a little bit weirded out by, and now it's become something that kind of echoes the church and is pretty stately. And then, just I guess I'm going first, sorry. I feel that the material palette was vastly improved. It's become a lot less busy. I saw a lot of Dab's comments around more consistent window sizes and less kind of random transitions being addressed. Yeah, I wonder if other planning board members have some observations or additional things they want to say. John.
I agree with you. I think that this is a far more attractive project now than it was when we looked at it in concept review. And I'd like to congratulate both teams of architects on both portions of the project on that front. I'm much more pleased with this project now from an aesthetic point of view than I was a few months ago. So thank you.
Thanks, John. Sarah.
Agreed with both David and John, but I'm going to make my regularly scheduled plea for street trees, please. Instead of the trees that are in the boxes, it would be really, I'm concerned that, because that area over there, it doesn't have much in the way of trees. It has some, but not much. And I'd love it if when we do this more urban infill, if we please focus on creating an opportunity for the trees to thrive, not just to survive for 7 years to be replaced in again. Okay, PSA over.
Great. Lisa?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like our comments last time and hopefully Dab's comments and feedback as well are really taken to heart, and it's a much improved design. I'll say, as much as maybe the prow of the ship wasn't my favorite aesthetically, I also appreciate the initial intent to do something really kind of visually arresting and, you know, that would be a little more of a landmark. So I understand why it's gone, and I think that's fine, but I still want to appreciate the architects and the effort they put into that initially. And I think we've landed on a really nice design that hopefully will make a lot of folks happy.
Thanks, Lisa. And I'll just say that I remember saying nice things about the ship prow as well. Peter?
John couldn't have said it any better from word for word about what I was going to say, and most everyone else, but I really identified with John's comments for the record.
Thanks, Lupita.
I'm just glad that I come last. I agree with everyone. I believe in the progression of the project, and I'm always happy when we agree.
Awesome. Well, great. With that, I think you know, if there's no additional conversation, we could go ahead and go to the motion making portion of this deliberation. Does anyone want to kind of lead us through motion making? Would you like me to? I've got the text in front of me. I can make motions, but I want me to go ahead and make. Okay, so I would move to approve site review case number LUR 2020-00064, incorporating the staff memorandum and the attached site review criteria checklist as findings of fact and subject to the conditions of approval recommended in the staff memorandum. You got a second on that one? I see Peter's hand first. So we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote on that. Peter?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Lupita?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And I vote aye on that. Okay, we have a second motion to approve use review case number LUR 2021-0001, incorporating staff memorandum and attached use review criteria checklist as findings of fact and subject to the conditions of approval recommended in the staff memorandum. And I guess just for those who didn't look up 00001, this is the use for the entertainment use. So do I get a second for that one?
John had it. John got it.
John got it first that time. Okay, great. So a second from John.
Wait, so I'm just
Discussion.
wondering, I'm not sure if it's discussion, but as long as Doug was willing to move the start time to 7:30, I don't know if that has to go into the motion language or if we can just rely on the applicant to make that change.
Well, you know, as far as Doug, are you happy changing the management plan on a verbal agreement so that we don't necessarily have to condition this? I guess you know, I mean, if people feel it needs to be conditioned, we could, but. Yeah.
We'll agree to make that change. I'll guarantee it gets in. Thank you, Sarah.
All right. Cool. All right. So I'll go. Any more discussion? And I've not been restating the motion since we've not had a whole lot of discussion. So I'll go ahead and do the roll call again. Peter.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Lisa.
Aye.
Lupita.
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
And I say aye. And then finally is motion to approve use review case number LUR 2021-00015, incorporating the staff memorandum and attached use review criteria checklist as findings of fact and subject to the conditions of approval recommended in the staff memorandum. And this would be the ELU. I'm just making sure. Yeah, the ELU use. So any discussion on that motion? Peter then. Oh, I'm sorry, do we need a second?
I was just rubbing my face.
Somebody else other than.
I'll second.
Was that a Sarah? Okay, thanks,
Or
Sarah.
Lisa, it doesn't matter. Sarah or Lisa, it does not matter. We both did it.
Sorry, I fumbled that.
We'll put down Sarah as the seconder. So Peter.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Lisa.
Aye.
Lupita.
Aye.
And Sarah. And I'll say aye. So we've got unanimous votes on all of the suggested motions. I want to congratulate the applicant and staff for
Thank you.
This went through fairly smoothly.
All right, build something beautiful.
Can't wait.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Okay,
Thank
and
you.
thanks again, Rory, for sticking with us. I guess we didn't have too many questions, but we do appreciate the support. Awesome. Okay, well, with that, we will close our public hearing item number 5A, and we'll move on to actually that was 4A, sorry, number 4A, and we'll move on to matters from the planning board, planning director, and city attorney. Starting with matters from planning board, I'll just say right away that we saw Lupita, your plan to leave us effective the end of the year. We will certainly miss you, and we certainly appreciated your wonderful contributions and perspectives through the years, what has it been like? Is it going to be 3 years that you were on, or 2 years? 3 years, yeah. So thank you for that. And we wish you all the best. Anyone want to share some favorite moments?
So Lupita, you have to tell us where you're going.
I'm going back home to California. Yeah. And I will be working for a nonprofit focusing on environmental and social justice.
Awesome.
Working directly with communities as a scientist on the advocacy side now, and using my training as it should be to do science. And support of the people that need it the most, especially after this pandemic. It's pretty clear that they're not being protected. So I'm moving into that space to be helpful. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to it.
Good for you.
Wow. Great.
That sounds
Okay,
like
well,
such a perfect fit for you, Lupita, and they're really lucky to have you. We're sorry to be saying goodbye, but it sounds like a really good fit. I hope it is.
Yeah, I can't wait. So far it is. It's just a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
But
go ahead and jump on in, Peter and Sarah.
I have two favorite, well, I have many memories, but two favorite ones. One is the expression, I'm not going to turn myself into a pretzel. I think about that all the time now. And the other one was when we had a project and some folks were talking about how long they'd been on the land near a particular site. And then you asked them if they were aware of who was on the land before them hundreds of years ago. And there was just this stunning silence, and it was like, point made.
And what I will carry forward is we're not the welcoming committee, we're the planning committee. Because I think it behooves us to carry that banner forward, stitch it on every pillow in our house, make it a motto we all have to take an oath on, and support planning staff and future planning boards in planning. So thank you, Lupita, for your pithy summation of what it is we're supposed to be doing. And I will miss you greatly.
You can always find me. So I do want to say though, the biggest homage I could have received today was when David asked the question about, our people that are often forgotten, and that is those who use their trucks and big cars to take care of our gardens, our construction. And those are the people that need to be remembered when you guys make decisions. Those who are not in that room, and those who oftentimes, don't have a voice. That was the mission I tried to carry when I came in here. And I just hope that I was helpful in some small way. And I wish you great success. And I will actually be looking at the planning board and the city of Boulder for some guidance in some of the initiatives that are happening in San Diego, which is where I'm going to be. And primarily with regards to open space, which is one of the areas where they do need some help in some sort of model. And so in that sense, I feel like I can add something to the mix there based on my experience in Boulder.
Wonderful. Well, anyone else have anything else? I know you'll do great work, and again, we're looking at another board member leaving us without the opportunity to get together for an in-person, dinner or whatever. But those are the times we're in. So we just have to look at each other on this screen as we always do, and but we all wish you well. All right. Well, thanks so much. And I do have one other matter. Just very quickly, there was a request from a researcher with CU Bari, Boulder Affordable Housing Research Initiative, who sent an email to us yesterday. She had reached out to me, and I actually interviewed with her, and it's kind of a nice thing to do. Because they are doing research for Boulder Housing Partners and the city of Boulder to try to inform our affordable housing program. So and inclusion in the city. So if you can look at that email, she asked me if I could give her individual email addresses, and I know we don't do that on the website. Does anybody have, if she doesn't hear from someone, does anyone have an issue with with me providing your personal email address or your email address to her so she can just reach out to you personally if she needs it?
I've already set up a time with her to talk, so you can feel free to send mine anyway.
Great. I didn't think anybody would mind, but I just thought I'd throw that out there because I know we're not putting our email addresses out on the website at this point. So awesome. Great. Yeah, encourage you to do that. I had a nice hour-long interview. Any other matters from the board?
I have a couple.
Yeah.
So I had recently read an article about the city's climate objectives, climate goals, and I wanted to understand from staff I wanted to ask staff if going forward they could start highlighting when we do site reviews and use reviews, 9-2-14 FX and FX1, which have to do with building design, livability, and relationship to the existing or proposed surrounding areas. And they have to do with minimizing impacts on natural systems and minimizing or mitigating energy use, et cetera. I know that it's one of the check marks, one of the checklist for site and use review, but I'd really appreciate it if going forward we could highlight it, given our commitment to reducing our climate footprint and the role that buildings play in that.
Yeah, we'd be happy to, Board Member Silver. I'd also draw your attention to the fact that that's one of the criteria that we're trying to smooth out as part of the site review criteria reform project that Carl Geiler is working on. So hopefully here in the not too distant future, we should be bringing forward some language that's a little bit more intuitive and prescriptive.
Awesome. Thank you. And then I have one other thing, which do we have a number for actual new dwelling units that have been approved by the city, let's say over the last 5 years, and what percentage of those approved dwelling units are permanently affordable? There's some conversations going on and there's numbers being thrown around, and it would just be really valuable to actually know what's been approved. It may not have been built yet, but what's been approved. And I know that Jacob, before he left, made a point in one of the exit interviews he did with one of our local news sources to say, one of the most important ththings we could do to address housing is to actually build the things that have been approved. So I'd be really curious to know like what that is, how many dwelling units have been approved and or built over the last 5 years, and what percentage of those are permanently affordable, if that's possible.
Yeah, we can pull that data down.
Appreciate that. Okay, those are my 2 questions. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Any other matters from board members? John?
Yeah, I'd just like to shout out to Cindy. We put together the letter to council, and Cindy saved us at the last minute with that we'd missed an important footnote that she put back in.
I would love to take the credit for that, but that was David.
Oh, all right. Well, David, good for you too. So.
I was comparing it with the previous version. I'm like, oh, where'd that footnote go? But I didn't think that, since I actually watched your meeting last time, well, from start to end, while working out at my home gym, of course, because you have to multitask when you're watching meetings.
Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy, for putting that back in.
Can I just follow up with, maybe Hella had this on her list, just follow up from the conversation we had last meeting about members of the public disclosure of any consulting relationships they might have with applicants.
Yeah, and maybe Lori wants to answer that because she's been taking the lead on that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, I'm happy to. What Helen and I have done is we have drafted some proposed language that and worked on it a little bit. And what we wanted to do is maybe set up a meeting with you, Sarah, and make sure that the proposed language kind of addresses what you, the concern that you had raised. And then maybe we could schedule it for the next meeting. If we think the language is workable, we could put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Sure, that'd be great. And I'm around. I'm not going anywhere over the holidays.
Right. And I'm not either, so we can work on it.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much.
Sarah, I almost blurted out. And also tell us if you're with an organization tonight, because I had watched the meeting and then I wait a minute, that was just proposed. It hasn't.
David, that's actually a really, really good addition, I think.
I think
mean,
so.
In today's, lots of people were already telling us, but it does not always the case.
I think it makes sense. It gives us a better perspective on what we're hearing, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Lisa.
Yeah, I'm gonna briefly possibly embarrass Lori, but we would all have gotten to meet her in person if we're meeting in person. I'm lucky enough to know her outside of planning board. And I think you're going to really enjoy working with her, Sarah. And we're very, very grateful that we have you here, Lori. And I'm excited to see what you put together for that. She has deep experience, lots of experience, and previously was actually a city attorney at another city. So we're just fortunate to have her. And sorry that we haven't gotten to actually see you in person and eat council food. That doesn't make sense to you, but it would if we could meet in person.
Not on the good china, though.
Yeah. There's also a candy bowl that none of us have gotten to see for a long time, which is very sad.
I miss empanadas. I thought
Yeah. And then sometimes if it was a really good meeting, you'll go out and get to have drinks. Anyway, one day.
Someday.
Thank you, Lisa, for your kind words. You were scaring me a little bit there with you were going to embarrass me. So it was.
There could be more knowledge there. So, and while we're embarrassing people, I'll just say that Peter, you did such a great job of chairing the meeting last week or 2 weeks ago. It was fun to watch. It was fun. You were very relaxed and your pace was great.
Well, it's thanks to the board here. It was a nice experience. I enjoyed it.
Thanks for doing that. So any other matters from planning board? How about from the planning director? Charles, anything?
No, nothing from staff, but just wanted to thank board member Montoya for her service to the board and the community. It's been great to get to know you and great to have you. The best of luck in your future endeavor. And if you ever need anything from staff that helps support your work, please reach out.
Indeed, I will. I already said We have great people. And if there's something that that Boulder has done really well is dealing with open space. Now they call it green space, but it's the same idea. So I'm like, we'll bring all the examples. And I also, given the way they have great advances regarding diversity and taking care of my people, I'm hoping that anything that I'm learning over there, maybe I can kind of bring over here through my colleagues in the board or all the great people I met through the city.
Great. Well, thank you for that.
I'm sorry, can I just, we got a letter from someone who was responding to the CU Conference Center. And I wrote back to that person saying I would bring this up in matters. It's an email from, hold on, Alexi Davis, who is at Community Cycles. I think he or she has taken Kurt Nordback's place as the sort of advocate for Community Cycles, at least to planning, I think. Anyways, this person, Alexi, made a point about some concerns about the intersection of Grandview and the hill sidewalk heading north. And apparently that was supposed to is planned to be the it's an unsignalized access to a 500 stall parking garage that will be part of the CU Convention Center. And I don't know what influence the city has on these elements of what is a CU property. But I just wanted to highlight that this makes perfect sense, that you want to avoid having the garage intersect with what is essentially a high-speed ramp down into town that bicyclists are on and may not be protected from cars coming in and out of that road. So I just wanted to, I promised Alexi I would bring it up. I've brought it up. I don't know what it is that the city planning staff can do about it, but I want to make sure it's on everyone's radar.
No, I appreciate that. And Elaine's going to follow up with her directly. So the timing is perfect. While we don't have jurisdiction over CU and their development projects and processes, we do have a memorandum of agreement with CU about the conference center that gives us 60 days to review their plans. So we're providing courtesy comments to them, and we had planned to include Lexi's comments as an attachment to that. So we'll follow up with her directly as well.
Great, thank you so much.
Huh. Yeah, I haven't been able to find that email, but it went to planning board.
Mm-hmm. It went to transportation, and then we were CC'd on it.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. In fact, I wanted to follow up on that too with a question to Charles or Lori or Hella, and that is to clarify. I understand that CU is able to make its own decisions about what it does on its own land and so on without regard to Boulder's regulations. But does that include land that is newly purchased from other sources and becomes owned by CU and the CU Foundation and all of these associated organizations? Or is there some distinct boundary of that land that they can make these decisions on, and outside of that, land owned by CU and its organizations are still subject to city regulations?
I guess I'm going to try to answer that question. I think it comes down to whether the land is used for CU school purposes. And of course, the school is kind of a broad way in which it operates, lots of accessory type uses. But whether or not the land was recently purchased shouldn't make a difference in that. And it could also include leased land, for example.
So if they lease land, then the city loses control over it for the duration of the lease, or what?
I think, yes, I think for this, CU would not be bound by the city's land use regulations. And I haven't looked it up for tonight's meeting and refreshed my memory. So I believe that that would be the case for leased land as well.
Well, I think that's pretty important because CU has been very acquisitive. And it's just interesting for us to know what the consequences are for what we can do. So.
Yeah, and then conversely, I would think that if CU owned land, but it was used differently, and it was leased by CU to a third party for non-university use, then that use would have to comply with the land use regulations.
Thank you.
Great.
That's interesting.
Okay. Well, and then Hella and Lori, you got anything from the city attorney's office tonight?
I just also wanted to thank Lupita. I'm thankful for the service that you've provided for the city. I'm sad that you're leaving a little bit early, but I'm glad for the time that you had and for the perspective that you've brought to the board and have always brought everybody back to and reminded us all of. I think it was a little bit different than what many other board members have brought to the board. So I really appreciated that. And I especially enjoyed talking to you offline. And I'm sending you off with best wishes for these new endeavors that you in your future.
And Lupita, I'm sorry we didn't get to meet in person. Maybe our paths will cross someday. I wish you the best of luck in your new endeavors.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, and Cindy, we have calendar checked and anything?
I just sent yesterday, I think, that January 4th meeting is canceled. So Happy New Year and Christmas. And so our next meeting will be January 20th. And
January 6th, right?
The 6th was canceled.
I'm getting my council meetings and my planning board meetings mixed up. So January 6th is canceled. Yes. And so we will be meeting on January 20th is our next meeting. And we're going to have a big fun year in 2022. So get ready.
There's
scheduling a lot of meetings.
Can I ask a question, Cindy? I know there's some discussion at City Council about switching City Council meetings to Thursdays.
Don't even think about that. It probably won't be until at least after council break is what I hear, the recess.
Yeah, it would likely be April, but we're working through the logistics internally on how that would work and what that would mean for other boards that meet on Thursday night.
They're collecting a lot of feedback, a lot of research on what needs to be done and how it would work. And believe me, I've given them an earful.
Okay.
I'm sure you're talking about this, and correct me if I'm wrong, others might have a better sense of this than I do, but don't many municipal councils across Colorado meet on Tuesdays? Isn't that like kind of the night that's frequently used by many? There just might be other reasons beyond just the city of Boulder why we might wish to keep that evening.
Charles, answer that. I don't really know.
Yeah, many communities do have their council meetings on Tuesday nights, but
I just want to make sure. My big thing is like, if we're going to do it, let's make it stick and do it for a long time. If we're going to change it, I don't want to do it just for one council. You know what I mean? Because it's a lot of logistics to change things. So I'm going to have to take 2 days off to change everything.
No. Is there any feedback on when we might start meeting in person again?
Probably. Oh, I heard. So as you know, we're not doing anything until council does it first. So, okay. And council is not going to do anything until after March.
Okay.
2022. So don't even think about anything until after first quarter, at least. So council has to do it first.
Got it.
So that means I will not be chairing a meeting at the Penfield Tate II Municipal Building. Darn it.
Oh, and Lupita, best of luck to you. in your future endeavors. And I'm jealous you're moving to California because that's where my heart and soul is, but good luck to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cindy.
I don't know how we're ever going to be able to draft anything succinct and to the point, because we're losing your fabulous drafting skills, and you really hit it hard with that with the last couple of council letters, and so thank you for helping us get our thoughts so well organized, Lupita. And well, I'll just once again say how much we wish you the best. So if the Hilla, did you have something else to say?
Yeah, I've been thinking about John's question, and I think I want to change my answer.
How exciting.
Well, talking about leased land, I think if the land is only leased by a CU, then that may not be the case, that they're not subject to the city's regulation, because the property owner would still be subject to the city's regulations. So I think we may have authority in that circumstance.
Thank you.
All right. Any other loose ends? We good to go? Okay, well,
Thanks, everybody.
happy holidays, happy New Year to everybody.
Happy holidays.
Next year.
Happy holidays.
Good night, everyone.
Bon voyage, Lupita.
Be safe.
Thank you.
Bye.